Hey guys, tonight we drift back to a time before telescopes, before glass strong enough to bend light, before science had a name. You're standing beneath a sky that belongs to everyone and explains nothing. The stars above you aren't facts or coordinates. They're gossiping gods, flickering ancestors, the eyes of spirits watching to see if you behave. It's the same night that has watched every creature since the beginning, and it's loud with silence. Before we begin, take a moment to hit like and subscribe, but only if you really connect with what I create here. I want this space to stay quiet and curious, a small corner of calm for people who like to wonder. If you're listening right now, drop your location and local time in the comments. It's oddly comforting to imagine all of us under the same sky, scattered across time zones, but gazing at the same ancient ceiling. Now, dim the lights, maybe light a candle for that soft, flickering glow, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand in an open field that could be anywhere: Mesopotamia, the Nile Valley, the edge of the Sahara, or a nameless patch of land between rivers. The air feels untouched, the kind that hasn't yet learned the smell of cities. The Milky Way spills overhead like milk poured carelessly across a table, thick with light and dust. There are no street lamps, no satellites, no airplane trails. The darkness feels alive, and the stars, there are too many to count, cast just enough glow that you can see your shadow moving with the grass. Around you, the first astronomers are already at work, though they wouldn't call themselves that. They're farmers trying to time the floods, hunters marking the seasons, shepherds passing the long night with questions that won't stop multiplying. No one uses the word science, but that's what's happening. Patient people noticing patterns, measuring with eyes and fingers, trusting memory more than tools. A thumb becomes a compass, a puddle becomes a mirror, a stick planted in the dirt becomes a clock. They aren't recording the heavens, they're memorizing them. The earliest astronomers don't wear robes of wisdom, they wear whatever keeps out the cold. They crouch by firelight, scratching lines in dust, tracing the positions of stars with calloused hands. Every gesture is a kind of faith. Their only tools are their senses, and those senses are astonishingly sharp. When a man holds his hand up to the horizon to measure the moon's rise, that is mathematics. When a woman marks the point where the sun first touches the riverbank each morning, that is a calendar. When they both agree to meet at the same spot when the same star reappears, that is civilization. The night is enormous, full of strange sounds. A fox coughing in the dark, reeds sighing, water shifting somewhere unseen. You hear your heartbeat, slow and stubborn, echoing the rhythm of the turning sky. The stars seem to drift westward, an illusion created by Earth's spin, though no one knows that yet. To you, it feels as though the heavens are moving and you're standing still in the center of everything. That mistake will take thousands of years to correct, and even then, people will fight about it. Someone nearby points upward, drawing lines between bright points. A cluster becomes a hunter, another a bear, another a scorpion. The constellations change from land to land, but the instinct is always the same: make meaning from pattern. It's humanity's first act of data organization. The dots become pictures, the pictures become stories, the stories become belief. Later, some of those same shapes will become navigation charts, the difference between a ship lost at sea and a ship coming home. A child asks what the lights really are, and the elders offer competing answers. The stars are holes in the night, says one. They're the souls of the dead, says another. They're gods who never come down, says a third. Somewhere, an impatient thinker wonders aloud if they're just faraway fires, tiny suns like our own. Historians still argue which ancient culture came closest to guessing the truth first. You lie back on the ground, grass cool against your neck, and imagine yourself rising into that infinite ceiling. You wonder if anyone will ever count them all. You don't know it yet, but someone will. Many someones, in every age, losing sleep to number the unnumberable. A breeze slides over you. The fire pops. The air smells faintly of smoke and dust, that ancient perfume of survival. You can almost feel the planet turning beneath you, a subtle pull you can't explain. You think maybe the world moves and the stars stay still, but that idea feels dangerous, so you keep it to yourself. In time, others will whisper it too, quietly, fearfully, and sometimes fatally. There's a moment before dawn when the stars fade, one by one, swallowed by gray light. You time it with your breath, noting how long it takes for each to disappear. By accident, you invent a clock. You scratch marks on a piece of bone, intending only to remember, but you've made a calendar. That small act, trying not to forget, will shape everything from taxes to religion. Priests will later call it prophecy, but it began with simple curiosity and insomnia. You roll onto your side and see the faint outline of the first monument someone built to chase sunrise, a circle of stones arranged by hand, calibrated by patience. It isn't yet sacred, it's a measuring device disguised as a prayer. The people who built it didn't know they were founding science. They just wanted to know when winter would end. The sun breaks the horizon, cold light spilling over everything. You blink and look back at the fading stars, feeling a strange affection for them, like distant friends retreating into the day. You'll see them again tonight, right where you left them, and that simple predictability, the promise that the sky remembers its own order, will be enough to keep you going. The fire dies. Smoke drifts upward, mixing with the pale dawn. The first astronomers pack up their thoughts and go about the ordinary chores of staying alive. But something has changed. Once you've started counting the stars, you never stop. Even when clouds cover them, even when centuries pass, you still look up. Always up. Night comes again faster than you expect. The sky stretches wider than memory, and this time you're not afraid of the dark. You're studying it. The stars are still there, patient as ever, though the way people see them begins to shift. The first campfires of curiosity have burned into something deeper, calculation. You sit near a river, watching the reflection of the heavens quiver on its surface. Someone behind you is whispering to a group of listeners. They speak of gods in the constellations, rulers who ride across the night to decide the world's fate. It's not storytelling anymore. It's accounting. The heavens keep score. You're in a world where fear and fascination are twins. People believe that the stars can predict floods, famine, even heartbreak. They name them, honor them, and tremble before them. When one star vanishes or a new one appears, the whole city panics. Maybe a king will fall. Maybe a god will wake. It's all written up there, they insist, if only you can read the language. Around you, families make offerings to the sky. Bowls of grain, small fires. Sometimes, if the year has been cruel, blood. They watch the smoke drift upward, hoping it carries their messages to whoever might be listening. You stand a little apart from the ritual. The scientist in you, though you don't know that word yet, can't stop asking what exactly the stars are. But for now, you play along. In the near distance, an old man chants. His voice carries across the reeds, a rhythm that matches your pulse. He tells of a serpent that swallows the sun each night and spits it out again every morning. The pattern of stars along the serpent's back marks the seasons. You close your eyes, listening, imagining the great cosmic snake coiling around the world, glittering with scales of starlight. It's terrifying and beautiful, and part of you wants to believe it. The next morning, you help the priests mark the rising of a particular star, bright, unwavering, the first to appear before dawn. You'll learn later it's Sirius. To them, it's a herald, announcing the flooding of the Nile. Entire harvests depend on its timing. The priests carve the sighting date into stone, a record that will last longer than any of their names. This is how fear becomes precision. Every superstition leaves behind a useful scrap of data. A flood after a certain constellation appears, a drought after another. Enough scraps and you have a pattern. Enough patterns and you have a calendar. Enough calendars and, well, civilization starts to look inevitable. You glance at the river's edge, where reeds bend gently in the current. Someone once noticed that when the sun sets behind a specific mountain, those reeds cast shadows that reach the water at the same moment every year. They called it a sign from the gods. You call it predictable geometry. The difference is only vocabulary. Historians still argue whether the first astronomers were scientists or magicians. They performed calculations in temples, but they also wore charms for luck. They tracked planetary motion, but they also prayed before doing it. They believed that numbers were divine, that every angle had moral weight. Perhaps they weren't wrong. At night, you join them on a flat rooftop, staring up while the city below sleeps. The wind smells of baked earth and cooling ash. The priests bring tablets of wet clay, scratching in cuneiform the names of stars, their alignments, their strange repeating paths. Some of those marks will survive thousands of years, buried in sand, waiting for archaeologists who haven't been born yet. You imagine one of them brushing dust from a tablet and whispering "Teginthos." So this is where astronomy began. A comet passes overhead, sudden and arrogant. It steals everyone's breath. The crowd gasps, murmurs, kneels. A few weep. No one has seen it before, and no one knows if it will return. You feel your stomach drop. The sky, your steady friend, has just betrayed you. For a moment, all your careful charts mean nothing. You can't measure chaos. You can only watch it burn across the heavens and hope it's not a bad omen. The priests declare it a warning. You decide it's a question. Later that night, you can't sleep. The comet's tail still glows faintly. You stop fading into dawn. You think of how fragile certainty is, how the stars can hum with regularity for centuries and then suddenly surprise you. You wonder if that's what keeps humans looking up, not the comfort of order, but the thrill of discovering where it breaks. The next morning, a young apprentice drops a clay tablet in the dust. It cracks. He flinches, expecting punishment. Instead, his teacher laughs softly and says, "The sky will make more." You realize something. This is the first generation of people who believe knowledge can be rebuilt. That even if data is lost, the stars will offer it again tomorrow. You stand beside the temple's shadow, hand raised to block the glare of the rising sun, trying to trace where it will fall next week, next season, next year. You can't stop smiling. The gods may own the heavens, but you're learning the math behind their tricks. Tonight, the fear doesn't return. Only fascination does. You watch the darkness bloom again, scattered with 1,000 tiny questions, and feel lucky to be alive beneath them. The nights stretch longer now, and you find yourself among the ziggurats of Babylon, where the stars have become both scripture and science. From the base of a towering mud brick temple, you climb narrow steps that spiral upward, each one dusted with the footprints of priests and dreamers who came before you. The higher you climb, the more the city fades into a dull bronze hum. Markets, livestock, people arguing over grain, and the louder the sky becomes. Up here, above the noise, the universe feels close enough to touch. At the top, a priest in indigo robes greets you with a nod that's both holy and practical. He gestures toward a slab of clay already pressed with careful lines. It's a star list, one of thousands that Babylonians have etched over centuries. Some stars are marked with triangles, others with dots or curious symbols that look a little like modern emojis but mean, watch this one. It moves weird. You can't help smiling. Even then, scientists were leaving sticky notes for the future. The priest shows you how they keep time. A bowl of water, a floating disc, a small hole in the bottom. As water drips out, the disc slowly sinks. When it touches the bottom, an hour has passed, or something close enough to call an hour. It's primitive but hypnotic. Every drop is a heartbeat of the cosmos. He says the gods taught them this, but you can see the experimenter's patience in his hands. He's less a prophet than a man who hates being late. At dusk, a second priest joins, carrying a stylus carved from bone. Together, they begin their ritual. One calls out star names while the other presses symbols into clay. They record the moon's path, the wanderings of Mars and Venus, the occasional guest appearance of a comet. They know each by its rhythm. Venus rises like a punctual queen. Mars staggers, drunk on war. Mercury flickers at the horizon like it's perpetually nervous. You recognize these personalities. They've survived into modern astrology. Historians still argue whether the Babylonians separated astronomy from astrology at all, or if, to them, the two were the same song played on different instruments. The night deepens. You trace a finger along one of the clay tablets, feeling the impressions left by generations of careful hands. Every symbol is both observation and prayer. The priests believe the stars speak to them, but you sense it might be the other way around, that they're teaching the universe their language, one wedge-shaped mark at a time. Below, the city glows with oil lamps. Above, Jupiter hangs like a lantern suspended from an invisible ceiling. The priest points to it and says something that translates roughly as the judge of kings. It's said that Jupiter's movements foretell political shifts, peace or conquest, depending on its color and brightness. You try to imagine a ruler checking the planet's mood before declaring war. It sounds absurd until you realize people still check horoscopes before first dates. Not much changes. A warm wind sweeps across the rooftop, carrying sand that stings your face. The stars shimmer through it like light through gauze. The priest doesn't flinch. He's watching a specific constellation, the Great Twins, waiting for them to cross a certain point in the sky. When they do, he exhales, relieved, and makes a mark on the tablet. You ask why that moment matters, and he smiles faintly, because it matches last year. You realize he's building a pattern library, one careful night at a time, proving that the sky has habits. In the morning, the ziggurat casts a shadow so long it touches the market square. You follow its edge, measuring its creep across the ground, noticing that it moves predictably with each passing day. A few priests are already using that shadow as a kind of solar calendar. Every solstice, they adjust their marks, fine-tuning the city's festivals, taxes, and marriages. Imagine having your wedding date decided by geometry. One apprentice sits apart from the others, sketching something in the dust. You lean closer and realize it's a crude map of constellations. Dots for stars, lines connecting them. He's adding new ones, improvising. You can tell he's not following the official list, and when he catches you watching, he grins guiltily. Maybe the gods missed a few, he whispers. That tiny rebellion will outlive him. Every astronomer, from Galileo to the ones building observatories on mountains, will inherit that same impulse, to look at the official sky and think, I can improve this. Later that night, you lie beside the Euphrates, watching the reflection of stars ripple across the water. The constellations distort, stretch, reform, as if the river itself is arguing with the sky. You dip your hand into the current, and for a moment, the cold water and the warm air balance perfectly. You realize that this act of noticing is all science really is. Curiosity sustained by patience. A flash of lightning flickers to the north. You count the seconds before thunder answers. 3, 4, 5, and you can't help but measure. You wonder if those priests ever tried to time storms or track where lightning struck. They probably did. The urge to explain is as human as fear. When dawn breaks, the ziggurat looks less like a temple and more like a machine, one designed to turn light into knowledge. The clay tablets dry in the heat, preserving not just data, but wonder. Thousands of years later, people will dig them up and marvel at how accurate they were about how much the Babylonians understood without telescopes or electricity. They mapped planets by eye, predicted eclipses by repetition, and built mathematics out of curiosity and ritual. As you walk away from the temple, the city waking around you, you glance back once more at the top platform. A priest is already up there again, squinting at the pale morning sky, chasing a faint dot that might be Venus. His hands are steady. His faith is not blind. It's empirical. And for the first time, you realize how strange and beautiful it is that so much of modern science began with people praying upward, but measuring sideways. The desert air turns cooler as you leave Babylon behind. The sun dips low and the world smells of dust, oil, and quiet ambition. You've walked eastward for days, tracing the same trade routes that carried silk, spices, and stories, and with them the mathematics of the stars. Somewhere ahead, the horizon begins to shimmer with gold. Egypt. By nightfall, you reach the banks of the Nile, and the air feels heavy with life. Frogs sing from the reeds, water laps softly against carved boats tied to poles. Across the river, silhouettes of temples and pyramids rise like dark teeth against the sky. You settle on a rock near the water, waiting for the show you've heard about, the rising of Sirius. You're not alone. Dozens of figures gather in silence, their linen robes glowing faintly in the moonlight. They speak quietly, almost reverently. The air tastes of incense and anticipation. Somewhere nearby, a priest mutters that when the dog star appears, the floodwaters will soon follow. It's more than prediction, it's survival. Without the flood, the crops die. Without crops, Egypt falls. One bright star holds up the economy. Then it happens, a pinpoint of light, faint at first, then sharper, rising just above the horizon. The crowd gasps, a few people kneel. You feel it too, that small, shivering awe. The priest lifts a bronze mirror, angling it toward the water. The reflection shivers, a twin star born on the surface of the Nile. You realize what they're doing, aligning the heavens and the river, syncing divine time with earthly flow. This is no random stargazing. This is family. The Egyptians have turned astronomy into bureaucracy. They know exactly when to dig irrigation channels, when to plant, when to collect taxes. Everything begins with the stars. Somewhere in Thebes, a scribe sharpens his reed pen to note the sighting, his hand already aching from the precision it demands. His calculations will fill scrolls that bureaucrats will copy for centuries. Historians still argue whether these early skywatchers were scientists or simply pragmatic priests. They built temples that aligned perfectly with solstices and equinoxes. They measured time not by clocks, but by the tilt of shadows across sacred stone. You stand before one of these temples now, its entrance cut so precisely that the rising sun slips through once a year to illuminate a single hieroglyph. You can almost hear the collective sigh when that beam of light lands exactly where it should. You join a group of astronomer priests on the roof of a temple, their silhouettes outlined against the Milky Way. They carry tools that look humble but are quietly revolutionary: palmwood sighting rods, knotted cords, and a thing called a merket, a straight piece of wood with a string hanging from its end. You watch as they line the string with a star and mark its position on the horizon. They do this night after night, patient as the tide. Over time, those marks form a map of the sky so precise it could rival a modern chart. Their measurements are more than data, they're devotion. To them, the stars are servants of order, manifestations of Ma'at, the Egyptian principle of balance. The same laws that keep the stars circling above are believed to keep pharaohs just, kingdoms stable, and bread affordable. The heavens are not only predictable, they are moral. One of the priests hands you a papyrus scroll, its surface dense with inked figures, star names, angular distances, cryptic notations about rising times. You can read just enough to grasp what it is: a star clock. The Egyptians used them to tell time through the night, dividing hours by which constellations rose or sank. When you compare it to your memory of the Babylonian tablets, you realize something extraordinary. Two distant civilizations have invented precision for entirely different reasons, one to appease gods, the other to manage floods, and both found truth in the same stars. A sandstorm rolls in the next evening, swallowing the horizon. The priests retreat indoors, but you stay on the temple roof, wrapped in a thin cloak, watching as the heavens fade to nothing. For a few minutes, you understand the terror of losing the sky. Without stars, there is no direction, no prophecy, no proof of order. just wind and grit. You cover your face and wait. When the storm clears, the stars return, blurred at first, then clear again, and you feel a gratitude that borders on worship. Later, at dawn, you follow the priest to a small stone enclosure near the temple's base. It's filled with bowls of polished water, each reflecting the pale morning light. They say these bowls are for catching the stars, not literally, of course, but to mark their paths at dawn's first glimmer. You crouch beside one and see your reflection shimmer beside a fading star. It's humbling. Every measurement is part wonder, part self-portrait. You leave Egypt with sand in your clothes and an ache in your heart, carrying the realization that the earliest astronomers were not chasing the unknown, they were defending the known. They wanted stability, predictability, something permanent in a world where crops failed and kings died. The stars were their constants. As your boat drifts down the Nile, the last light of evening catches the temple's peak. You see the priests on the roof again, their merkets held high, strings taut against the night. They look like they're tuning the sky itself, adjusting the universe one star at a time. And you think, quietly, reverently, that maybe they were. You leave the Nile's calm behind and head toward greener hills and rougher skies. The air grows cooler, softer, full of moss and wood smoke. Stone rises out of the ground like forgotten teeth. You are somewhere in the far west now, across the sea, perhaps in the misty lands that would one day be called Britain or Brittany or somewhere nameless in between. The people here do not write in clay or carve in papyrus. They write with shadows. The first thing you notice is the circle of stones. It's larger than it looks from a distance, massive slabs balanced in impossible silence. The air hums with the weight of centuries. You walk between them, feeling the temperature shift, as if each stone remembers a different season. This is where astronomy becomes architecture. These people have no tablets, no written charts, but they have geometry you can walk inside. A man with windburned cheeks waves you closer. He carries a stick topped with a bone sighting notch. Together, you stand inside the circle as dawn begins to lighten the horizon. The air smells like rain and sheep. He points to a particular notch between two stones. You follow his gaze, and there it is, the first blade of sunlight slicing through the gap. The beam hits a specific mark on a central rock. He grins, toothless and proud. It worked, you can almost hear him say, though his language is lost to time. This place is a calendar made of stone and sweat. Every midsummer, the sun rises in perfect alignment. Every midwinter, it sinks behind another precise notch. People gather to celebrate not the gods, but the clockwork of creation. They've managed to trap time in rock. Historians still argue whether these circles were temples, observatories, or both. You decide they were neither. They were questions made solid. The man's daughter, small, barefoot, eyes bright as quartz, hands you a polished pebble. She points to a pile of smaller stones arranged near the edge of the circle. Each one represents a moon. She moves them, counting softly, then looks to the sky where a pale ghost of the moon still lingers in the dawn. You realize she's keeping lunar time, marking cycles the way the Babylonians tracked planets. Her whole education fits in her hands. By noon, the community gathers. The entire hilltop buzzes with life. Traders, farmers, priests, children chasing each other between stones that will outlive them all. Smoke from the fires drifts into the air, joining the clouds like new constellations. You watch as a priest sprinkles crushed herbs into the flames, murmuring words that sound like mathematics disguised as poetry. You catch fragments, numbers, directions, maybe prayers, but the rhythm is unmistakable. This is data spoken aloud. When the shadows grow long, a group of men carry torches around the outer ring of stones. The flames wobble in the wind, tracing an arc that perfectly matches the sun's path from morning to night. The synchronization is eerie, beautiful, deliberate. You feel a quiet shiver of recognition. This is the same hunger for pattern that guided Babylon's priests and Egypt's astronomers. Only here, it's spoken in the language of rock and fire. After the crowd disperses, you stay. The stones creak slightly in the evening wind, a low groan like the earth itself remembering its purpose. You lie on your back and stare upward. Without the temple roofs or city smoke, the stars look impossibly sharp, 1,000 lights, steady as breath. You lift your hand and frame them between your fingers, the way the old man framed the sunrise. You're doing the same thing he is, just sideways. You're measuring wonder. In the middle of the night, you wake to a drum beat. It's faint, steady, coming from beyond the ridge. You follow it, your feet sinking into damp grass. A small group has gathered around a fire, beating rhythmically while a woman chants. She's describing the phases of the moon, though she doesn't use words like waxing or waning. She calls it the breathing of the sky. You smile. That's not wrong. One of the drummers looks up, his face painted with ash. He gestures toward the firelight, then the stars, then you. You think he's saying something like, as above, so below. You nod. It's the oldest agreement in the world. When dawn returns, pale and hesitant, the mist creeps low across the field. You notice that every stone casts a perfect shadow, long and thin, pointing toward the rising sun. Someone has marked their ends with bits of charcoal. This is how they measure the seasons. The shadow's reach changes daily, shrinking, stretching, telling time without a single number. You kneel to trace one with your finger. The ground is cold, wet, and steady beneath you. You think of the Babylonians watching Venus, the Egyptians aligning temples, and realize this too is the same pursuit, the desire to make peace with chaos. To know where you are in the vast machinery of sky and earth. The wind shifts, carrying a smell of distant rain. Somewhere a raven croaks, a rough, guttural sound that echoes through the stones. You look up at it, black against the brightening horizon, and think how easily people once believed such creatures were messengers between worlds. Maybe they still are. You stand brushing dirt from your hands. The circle is quiet again. The people have gone back to their lives, fishing, weaving, tending fires, yet the stones remain, eternal students of sunlight. As you walk away, the sky blooms with pale gold. You don't need to look back to know the alignment will still be perfect next year and the year after that. Every civilization you visit teaches the same silent lesson, that astronomy begins not with discovery, but with devotion. The kind that rises early, waits through cold dawns, and believes that patience itself might reveal divine order. And as you descend the hill, mist curling around your feet, you realize that even without telescopes, the ancients managed to build something just as powerful: faith that the universe could be measured one sunrise at a time, and crossing mountains until the air grows thin and cold. Then, one night, the clouds scatter, and the horizon widens into something new. Silk roads, caravans, bronze mirrors gleaming in torchlight. You've arrived in ancient China, where the stars are not merely stories, they are bureaucracy. The first thing you notice is the order. Even the heavens here have ranks and departments. The sky is an empire reflected in itself. Each constellation assigned duties: celestial officials, heavenly river keepers, star generals guarding the north. The emperor's astronomers watch them the way accountants watch ledgers. Every flicker matters. You're led through a courtyard filled with wooden stands and bamboo tubes, sighting instruments that look simple but carry an air of ritual. The court astronomer, an old man with ink-stained sleeves, greets you politely. His eyes are small and bright, as if they too have been narrowed by years of staring upward. He shows you a scroll, fine silk covered in delicate brushstrokes. It's not art, it's a star map, the oldest in the world. The stars are arranged in perfect rows, each labeled with a name that sings softly when he reads it aloud. The herd boy, the weaving girl, the celestial dragon, the jade palace. You notice how much of their sky is about duty and balance, not war or passion. Here, constellations don't chase or devour, they administrate. At night, you climb with him to a wooden tower on the palace roof. The city below glows with lanterns, but beyond the walls, the land fades into a quiet that feels eternal. The astronomer carries a polished bronze mirror and a brush. He explains that the mirror helps trace the sky's reflection in still water, another way of capturing alignment when clouds threaten to ruin observation. You realize that in every civilization, someone has looked into water to understand the heavens. Maybe all science begins with reflection, literal or not. The astronomer points to a cluster of stars near the north. Bay Do, he says softly, the Northern Dipper. You know it as the Big Dipper, the handle of Ursa Major. To him, it's the Emperor's chariot, forever circling the pole star, which remains unmoved, the cosmic throne. The symbolism is clear. The heavens themselves affirm who rules on Earth. You're tempted to joke that it's good public relations, but he's too earnest for sarcasm. Still, you can't help but admire the discipline. Each night, teams of observers note not just what they see, but what it might mean for the state. A red glow near a certain star? The court might interpret it as a warning about rebellion. A dimming planet? A sign the harvest will fail. Entire policies hang on these interpretations. Historians still argue whether this was science corrupted by politics or politics legitimized by science. Probably both. When a new star appears, what you now know is a supernova, the empire trembles. The astronomers scramble to record its coordinates. They call it a guest star, polite but ominous. Messengers gallop through the night, bearing sealed reports to the emperor. It's dangerous knowledge. The wrong prediction could cost lives. You watch the astronomer's hand shake slightly as he paints the bright spot on silk. He sighs. Heaven is generous, but never kind. You spend days in that tower, helping grind ink, marking stars, charting their slow drift. The instruments are elegant, sighting tubes mounted on carved wood, weighted strings for measuring altitude, water clocks dripping with steady patience. You realize they've invented half the toolkit of modern astronomy centuries before anyone else, powered only by observation and obsession. On the 15th night, clouds roll in. The astronomer frowns. He paces, muttering calculations. Then he smiles faintly and gestures for you to follow him below. In a small chamber lit by candles, a large circular board rests on a stand. It's carved with tiny holes, each representing a star. Copper pins mark their positions. He rotates the board gently, showing how the heavens move. If the sky hides, he says, we move it ourselves. There's something touching about this. Humans refusing to be denied the stars, building them from memory and wood. You trace a line from one pin to another. It feels oddly intimate, like touching time itself. Later, when the clouds finally break, you return to the rooftop. The astronomer lifts his brush again, recording what changed. It's subtle, a shift barely visible to your eyes. Yet he notes it calmly, confidently. The sky drifts 1 degree every 72 years, he says. A whisper of time. You stare at him, realizing you've just witnessed precession being measured, 2,000 years before anyone in the West will prove it. As dawn stains the sky pink, the emperor's gong echoes through the city. The astronomer bows toward the palace before covering his instruments with cloth. Heaven is constant, he murmurs. But emperors are not. You nod, understanding that even here, under rigid order, the same quiet truth persists. The stars belong to no one. When you leave, he presses a small strip of silk into your hand, a fragment of a star map. The brushstrokes are so fine they almost vanish against the fabric. You fold it carefully, knowing it's a memory of human patience, of eyes that refuse to blink for fear of missing eternity. As you walk away from the palace, the morning market awakens. Traders shout, roosters call. The sky is pale, ordinary, but you glance at the silk one last time and see, faintly, the inked lines glimmer in the sun. The heavens are still there, organized, named, painted, yet untamed. You keep moving east, following the scent of ink and incense. The Silk Road fades behind you, and the air grows thick with salt and sea wind. You've reached a coast where paper scrolls dry beside fishing nets. Alexandria, though it doesn't yet know how many legends it's about to birth. Here, knowledge piles high like sand dunes, and the stars are treated not as gods or omens, but puzzles waiting to be solved. You wander into a vast marble hall lined with papyrus rolls. This is the great library, and even the dust feels intelligent. Scholars pace between columns, arguing softly about geometry and gods as if both could be measured. A woman's voice cuts through the murmurs, calm, low, but firm. Hypatia. You've heard of her before you ever arrived, though the centuries have blurred her edges into myth. In this moment, she's very real, standing beneath a skylight, her hands smudged with charcoal from the astrolabe she's adjusting. She's explaining to her students how the planets refuse to move in perfect circles. Even the heavens, she says, prefer ellipses. You can hear the dry humor in her tone. The students laugh, nervously. One of them glances upward as if expecting divine correction. Hypatia only smiles. If the gods disapprove, she says, they can publish their own data. You like her immediately. At night, she invites you to the roof of the museum where her instruments are kept. The air smells of olive oil and parchment. Lamps burn low. She gestures to an enormous bronze ring engraved with numbers and lines. We call it the armillary sphere, she explains. It lets us model the heavens in our hands. You run your fingers along the cool metal, tracing orbits that feel eternal. You think of all the nights spent by fires, counting stars with sticks and stones. Now, the cosmos fits between two palms. Progress always feels like magic the first time it works. She shows you how the sphere turns, the inner rings representing planets, the outer ones the stars. She adjusts a small lever, and suddenly the model whirs softly, each ring sliding into alignment. You watch sunlight reflect across its surface and feel dizzy, like standing inside the mechanism of time. Do you think it's true, you ask? That the heavens move around us? Hypatia glances toward the sea, where waves glimmer faintly in the moonlight. I think, she says slowly, it's only true because people are too proud to imagine otherwise. Her words hang there, fragile but fearless. Historians still argue whether she ever doubted the geocentric model outright, but you can hear it in her voice, the quiet rebellion of a mind that refuses to stay small. Below, the city hums. Alexandria is a living contradiction. Sailors praying to the same stars mathematicians are measuring. You pass a tavern where fishermen debate the behavior of the constellations, while across the street scholars calculate them with geometry. Both are right in their own way. The stars give everyone what they need, mystery for some, structure for others. In the library's inner courtyard, you find a room where star maps are painted onto the ceiling in pigment made from crushed lapis. The color hasn't faded, blue so deep it feels like falling upward. Each point of gold leaf glows like captured breath. You lie down on the cold marble floor, staring up at it, and it feels no different from lying under the real night sky, except this one will never shift or fade. The next morning, smoke stains the horizon. Rumors ripple through the city, soldiers, unrest, whispers about blasphemy, and books that challenge divine order. Hypatia moves quickly, gathering scrolls, instructing her students to copy what they can. Knowledge is slippery, she says, handing you a small bundle wrapped in cloth. It must always have more than one home. You help her carry the instruments, astrolabes, charts, bits of glass used to magnify sunlight, down to the harbor. She plans to hide them on a ship bound for Rhodes. Someone there still listens, she says. You nod, not trusting yourself to speak. You've seen enough of history to know how this ends. That night, the library burns. Flames lick the sky, orange against the sea's black reflection. Scrolls curl and burst, releasing centuries of thought into smoke. You stand on the shore beside Hypatia, who watches without a word. Her face is calm, not because she doesn't care, but because she understands. Fire can destroy paper, but not curiosity. The stars above flicker faintly through the rising ash, indifferent, eternal. When the last embers fade, she turns to you. Look, she says softly, pointing to the heavens. They're still there. You realize she's right. The stars remember what we forget. The knowledge written in them will always return to anyone patient enough to read it again. The city will rebuild. The fire will become myth. Hypatia's name will echo through time, sometimes as martyr, sometimes as heretic. But in this moment, she's just another person who stayed awake too long, staring upward, refusing to accept that mystery should mean ignorance. You leave Alexandria with the smell of smoke still clinging to your clothes and the faint blue stain of lapis dust on your hands. The night feels both heavier and kinder. Somewhere above you, the stars burn with the same light they've always had, untouched by fire, waiting to be mapped again by anyone with courage, patience, and bare hands. You travel north now, where the air tastes like copper and dust. The desert gives way to mountains, and the mountains to plateaus where wind hums across sandstone. The year is unknowable, but the night feels ancient beyond counting. You find yourself in Persia, under skies so clear that every star seems carved in glass. This is a land that never stops watching the heavens. From the courtyard of a vast observatory, one of the first of its kind, you hear a steady rhythm, metal striking stone, hammers shaping rings, scribes murmuring numbers under their breath. It's not a temple, it's a workshop of light. These are the astronomers of Isfahan, where mathematics meets poetry and geometry wears the perfume of jasmine. An old man in a white robe beckons you closer. His beard glows silver in the moonlight, his hands stained with bronze dust. We build what others only imagine, he says. Behind him stands a collection of instruments, giant quadrants, armillary spheres, polished brass discs engraved with constellations. They gleam softly like fragments of the sky pulled down to earth. He introduces himself as Omar. Yes, that Omar. Centuries before his poetry will outlive his measurements. Tonight, though, he's not writing verses about wine or fate. He's measuring the tilt of the planet. If the heavens are perfect, he says, then their movement must be measurable. You nod, though your mind lags a little behind the scale of his certainty. He places your hand on the cool brass edge of a quadrant the size of a doorway. This, he says, tells us not what the stars are, but where we stand beneath them. You can feel the math humming beneath your fingertips, a vibration of pure logic disguised as metal. The Persian scholars work in silence, except for the occasional scratching of reed pens and the faint rustle of parchment. The air smells of ink and sand. They use the astrolabe as easily as a farmer uses a plow. One student, no older than 16, explains how it can find the Qibla, the direction of Mecca, by aligning the instrument's movable plate with the known positions of certain stars. You realize that astronomy here isn't just curiosity, it's devotion, daily precision turned holy. As the night deepens, the observatory's walls seem to breathe. Each chamber opens to the sky like a lung. The scholars move between instruments with lanterns, casting amber pools of light on the floor. You join them at the large mural sextant, a curved stone groove that rises higher than your head. Two men stand on ladders, measuring the altitude of a star as it crosses the meridian. They call out angles, and a scribe writes them in flowing Persian script that looks almost too beautiful for mathematics. Historians still debate whether this exact observatory existed before Ulugh Beg's famous one at Samarkand, but whether myth or memory, you're here, and the precision is undeniable. These scholars are mapping the universe while the rest of the world still argues about the Earth's place in it. Omar gestures to the east, where dawn begins to soften the horizon. You see how the stars fade one by one, he asked, as humility. Even light must rest. His tone is gentle, but laced with melancholy. You can tell he knows how fragile knowledge is, how empires rise, libraries burn, and equations vanish with the scholars who wrote them. Later, as the others roll up their charts, Omar lingers beside the brass sphere. He runs his finger along one of the engraved lines. Every culture gives the sky a new language, he says. But it's the same sentence. You ask what that sentence says. He smiles. That we are small, but not uninvited. When the sun climbs fully above the horizon, the instruments cast long shadows that overlap on the stone floor. You notice how the curves of the astrolabe echo the domes of nearby mosques, how architecture itself mimics the heavens. It hits you suddenly. Every arch, every mosaic pattern is a frozen constellation. Even beauty here is built from astronomy. As you leave the observatory, you pass through a courtyard filled with orange trees and small fountains. A young apprentice is sketching stars into wet clay tiles that will one day decorate a minaret. He doesn't look up when you pass, his focus absolute. You wonder if he knows he's continuing the same lineages as Babylon, Egypt, and Stonehenge, turning wonder into craft and craft into memory. That night, you find a quiet ridge outside the city. The wind hums through the grass, carrying the faint scent of mint and metal. You lie back, looking up. The constellations you've seen across continents still hang above you, familiar yet strange under this new sky. You trace them with your finger, remembering how each civilization called them by different names but trusted them just the same. Somewhere behind you, a mosque's call to prayer ripples across the valley, gentle and haunting. The stars shimmer in answer, distant but attentive. You think of Omar's words, small but not uninvited, and you finally understand what he meant. The universe isn't cruel or kind. It's simply open, waiting for anyone brave enough to ask questions. You fall asleep there, wrapped in wind and starlight, dreaming of instruments yet to be built, of hands yet to rise toward the heavens. And the stars, those old, unblinking teachers, keep watching, patient as ever, ready for the next pair of eyes to start counting again. You awaken to the scent of smoke and spice, the sound of bells from somewhere deep in the city. The air is warmer now, thicker, colored by dust and turmeric. You've crossed another unseen border in time and geography, India, the land of mathematicians who dream in numbers and see the cosmos not just as space, but as rhythm. It's early morning in Ujjain, where the streets glow golden from sunlight bouncing off sandstone walls. Merchants are setting up stalls of dyed fabrics and clay pots, their laughter blending with the chant of monks nearby. Somewhere above this noise, at the highest point of the city, the observatory waits. You follow a narrow path upward, your sandals scraping stone polished smooth by centuries of curious feet. When you reach the top, you find a courtyard open to the sky. Instruments you don't recognize jut from the ground, massive stone arcs and steps carved into geometry itself. It's quiet, except for a handful of scholars sitting cross-legged around a figure who looks older than the walls. His beard flows like river foam, his gaze sharp enough to pierce the horizon. Varahami Hira, someone whispers, reverent. You know the name from Whispers of History. One of the 9 gems of Chandragupta's court, astronomer, mathematician, poet. His works will ripple across centuries, shaping both Indian astrology and global trigonometry. But now he's here in front of you, sketching a sundial diagram into the dirt with a stick. He motions for you to sit. You came to see how we measure the sky, he says softly without looking up. You nod. He smiles faintly. Good, because the sky is patient, but man is not. He points to a line of shadow creeping across the ground, cast by a thin metal rod. See, the earth speaks to us through shadows, the stars through silence. Both require listening more than seeing. You watch as his students take notes in careful Sanskrit, their lips moving as they whisper calculations, degrees, minutes, seconds, long before those words will reach the West. One apprentice hands you a palm leaf manuscript. On it, you see neat lines of numbers that seem to breathe. They are sine tables, early trigonometric ratios used to model planetary paths. You trace one with your finger. So this is the language of the heavens, you murmur. Varahamihira chuckles. No, my friend, this is the accent. The language itself is patience. The scholars speak of planets as wanderers, but they mean it literally. Grahas, the grabbers, celestial beings whose invisible hands tug at the fates of men. They know Jupiter's path across the zodiac with astonishing precision, timing eclipses to within hours. Their calculations predict the solstice before the sun itself confirms it. Historians still debate how they achieved such accuracy without telescopes, but watching them work, you see it. Repetition, memory, and a stubborn refusal to accept approximation. At dusk, they light ghee lamps along the courtyard's edge. The smell of butter and smoke fills the air. Varahamihira lifts one lamp, holding it level with the horizon. If we can track the sun's shadow, he says, we can also measure its reflection. He places the lamp beside a shallow bowl of water. The flame trembles, mirrored perfectly. The heavens live in the stillness of water. That is why the wise mind must be calm. The sky above begins to shimmer with early stars. The scholars unroll more manuscripts, maps of lunar mansions, charts showing how each segment of the night is ruled by a different deity. You recognize familiar constellations under strange names. Orion becomes Mriga, the deer. The Pleiades become Critica, the fiery sisters. The myths differ, but the geometry is unchanged. You realize every culture is tracing the same skeleton in the dark, dressing in its own stories. A faint breeze sweeps through the courtyard, stirring the palm leaves. One of the apprentices murmurs about an upcoming eclipse. Varahamihira listens, then shakes his head. Not fear, he says. Observation. The gods are teachers, not tyrants. He scribbles figures into the dust, predicting the moon's shadow crossing the sun. You've seen eclipses worshipped, dreaded, even outlawed, but here it's simply another proof of cosmic rhythm. When night deepens, the city below glows with small fires and laughter. The observatory, however, sinks into stillness. The scholars lie on their backs, watching the arc of Orion climb the sky. The stone instruments rise like frozen waves around you. You realize the structure itself is the telescope, one built for giants with patience instead of glass. A shooting star tears across the darkness, bright and brief. The apprentices gasp. Varahamihira does not. He only smiles. Even falling, he says, a star keeps its path. You tuck that line away, certain it will live longer than stone. Before dawn, you follow the scholars to a riverbank where they wash their faces in silence. The first light of the sun touches the water, painting it gold. They face east, whispering the Gayatri mantra, a prayer not for wealth or victory, but for clarity. You whisper it too, clumsily, the sound strange in your mouth, but somehow right. As the light spreads, you glance back toward the observatory. The instruments cast long shadows over the courtyard, the same ones that began your lesson the day before. The cycle is complete, precise, eternal. You turn to leave, the river at your back, and you realize that something inside you has changed. For the first time, you understand that astronomy isn't only about distance or motion, it's about humility. Every measurement is a bow to something bigger. Every equation, a whispered apology for how little we know. The wind stirs your clothes. Somewhere behind you, a bell rings once, then fades. You keep walking, following the line of sunlight, knowing it will lead to another culture, another sky, and another pair of hands reaching upward, chasing the same stars you now quietly call your own. You follow the path of sunlight west again, through forests that smell of pine and smoke, until the air thickens with humidity and the buzz of unseen insects. The trees grow taller, the nights louder. The stars here seem closer to the ground, as if the jungle itself breathes in rhythm with the sky. You've reached the lands of the Maya. The people here build their cities not along rivers, but along the heavens. Their temples climb like staircases for gods, each step aligned with celestial precision. You arrive in a clearing at dawn where a pyramid rises from the mist, its limestone sides glowing faintly pink. A narrow stairway cuts up the center, ending at a chamber that faces due east. The architecture isn't decorative. It's a calendar you can walk through. A priest wearing a jaguar pelt greets you. His eyes are lined with kohl, his hands stained with the red of cinnabar. He leads you upward, each step resonating like a drumbeat. Today, he says, Venus returns. You can feel the excitement in his voice, like a scientist about to confirm a prediction years in the making. At the summit, he unrolls a codex made of bark paper, its surface painted with blue and crimson glyphs. You recognize the pattern, rows of dots and bars, each one marking the planet's appearances and disappearances. Venus, he explains, is the twin of the sun. One burns the day, the other burns the dawn. His tone is part reverence, part calculation. The Maya have tracked the planet for centuries, predicting its every rising with an accuracy so fine it could rival modern charts. He gestures toward the horizon. The air shimmers with heat, the jungle below whispering in layers. Then it happens. A single point of light ignites just above the trees. The priest exhales sharply. The morning star. The crowd behind you murmurs prayers, but you're too awestruck to speak. Venus glows fiercely, impossibly bright. Historians still argue whether these observations were driven by religion or raw curiosity, but standing here you realize it's both. To the Maya, time itself is alive, a breathing thing with cycles like the moon and moods like the rain. The priest points to his codex again. When Venus disappears, he says, it walks the underworld. When it returns, it brings war or peace. We do not choose which. Below, drums begin to beat, slow and deliberate. The sound rolls across the jungle like thunder. You feel it in your chest. The priest nods to an assistant who adjusts a small obsidian mirror angled toward the sky. The reflection captures Venus, splitting its light into a thin, sharp beam that dances across the temple wall. You realize it's not for ceremony. It's an instrument, a visual marker of time. Even here, amid chants and smoke, science is hiding in plain sight. When the ritual ends, the priest sits beside you, unbothered by the heat. He dips a finger into a bowl of powdered limestone and begins drawing in the dust, circles, spirals, intersecting lines. This is how the heavens move, he says. The same stars return, but not in the same place. They drift like rivers. We build our cities to remind them where to go. You look down from the temple's edge. The city below is laid out like a celestial diagram, avenues aligned with solstices, courtyards tuned to equinoxes. Even the doorways point to specific constellations. You realize that this isn't random beauty. It's math you can live inside. At midday, the sun passes directly overhead, and the temple's shadow vanishes completely. The crowd gasps softly. No shadow means no imperfection. The priest smiles faintly. Now, he says, we are exactly where we should be. Later, you explore the observatory, a circular stone tower rising above the canopy. Inside, narrow slits in the walls frame slices of sky. When you stand in the right place, a single beam of sunlight passes through and lands on a carved glyph marking the solstice. You remember the stone circles of the north, the Merkits of Egypt, the star clocks of Babylon, and you feel an ache of recognition. Across continents, humans have always found ways to steady themselves by measuring the moving heavens. As night falls, the jungle transforms. Fireflies spark in the air like imitation stars. The priest invites you to stay. Together you sit on the temple steps, watching as Venus sets behind the distant hills. He hums softly, a tune that sounds like counting. Everything returns, he says. Even light that dies finds another sky. You close your eyes, listening to the hum of the forest. The frogs croak, the trees whisper, the stars blink through thin clouds. You think about how these people, with no telescopes, no metal, and no written alphabet as the modern world would define it, managed to calculate the length of a Venus cycle to within a single day of accuracy. And you understand, it wasn't the tools, it was attention, the kind that listens to centuries as if they're seconds. Before dawn, the priest gives you a shard of obsidian. A mirror, he says, for when you must look at the sky and remember the darkness is only half the truth. You take it, feeling the cool surface warm in your palm. The horizon brightens, the jungle exhales, and as Venus vanishes into the rising sun, you know that somewhere far away, Another civilization is looking up at the same sky, reaching out with bare hands ready to start counting again. When you next open your eyes, the air smells of parchment, brass, and oil lamps. The soft whisper of pages turning surrounds you. You're no longer in the jungle. You're in a city of libraries, arches, and quiet genius. Baghdad, during its golden age, a place where knowledge has become an empire. It's night, but the city never truly sleeps. The Tigris glitters like a spilled mirror, and above it, domes shimmer with reflected starlight. You follow the sound of voices, scholars, philosophers, navigators, all gathered in a great circular hall. Shelves of manuscripts rise like walls of honeycomb, and in the center, under a wide open dome, stands a group of men bent over instruments that gleam like captured moons. This is the House of Wisdom. And if Babylon invented the stars and Egypt measured them, Baghdad is now decoding them. A scholar in dark robes greets you with a nod. His name is Al-Sufi, though you've heard others call him a Zofi. He's working on a book, one that will list every visible star, describe its brightness, color, and motion. He will call it the Book of Fixed Stars. You watch as he dips a reed pen in ink, noting the faint blue hue of Rigel, the golden warmth of Aldebaran. He pauses, squints, then corrects the color. "The heavens," he murmurs, "do not tolerate sloppiness." Nearby, a young assistant polishes a brass disc, an astrolabe so intricate it looks like jewelry. It's heavier than you expect when he hands it to you. The rings slide under your fingers like smooth clockwork. With this, Al-Sufi explains, you can find the Qibla from anywhere in the world, measure the time of night, or calculate the height of a star above the horizon. His tone is gentle, but proud. It is the sky, made portable. You tilt the instrument toward the heavens, aligning the rete with the pole star, and the precision takes your breath. You can feel the centuries of trial and error in every perfect curve. The device hums quietly as though the brass remembers the hands that shaped it. Around you, the scholars debate softly. One argues that comets are celestial bodies, not vapors. Another insists the Earth might be smaller than previously thought. Someone quotes Aristotle, and someone else rolls his eyes. The conversation is equal parts mathematics and poetry. They call the stars by names you recognize: Altair, Betelgeuse, Vega, Arabic words that will survive in modern star charts long after this empire fades. At the far end of the hall, another man is bent over a scroll filled with geometric diagrams. His name is Al-Batani. He looks up briefly, nods to you, then returns to his calculations. Later, you'll learn that he refined the value of the solar year to near-modern precision, that he mapped eclipses, and that his equations will be read by Copernicus centuries later. But tonight, he's simply another man squinting under candlelight, trying to make the universe fit on paper. The air in the observatory thickens with incense and focus. One scholar climbs to the roof to record the moon's position through a slit in the dome. Another traces constellations on parchment, each star a dot of gold leaf. The instruments gleam: quadrants, armillary spheres, celestial globes etched with Arabic calligraphy so elegant it looks like music. Historians still argue whether Baghdad's astronomers were continuing the Greeks or surpassing them. You decide it doesn't matter. They aren't chasing fame, they're chasing consistency, the quiet miracle of agreement between mathematics and the night sky. Hours pass. You sit cross-legged beside a window, listening to the faint scratching of pens. Outside, the desert wind stirs palm leaves. Inside, equations whisper their secrets. You feel the rhythm of it, the same one that echoed in Babylon, Egypt, Stonehenge, and Ujjain. The same human heartbeat repeating across millennia. Near dawn, Al-Sufi rolls up his scrolls and gestures for you to follow him to the rooftop. The call to prayer floats through the city, soft and steady. You both stand there in silence, watching the last stars fade above the horizon. He speaks without looking at you. "The heavens are faithful," he says, "but only to those who visit them often." You ask if he ever grows tired of watching the same stars night after night. He smiles faintly. It is not the stars that change, he says. It is the man who looks. Below, the city awakens, merchants calling out, bread ovens smoking, riverboats creaking in their moorings. Above, the sky grows pale again, its secrets temporarily erased by sunlight. Al-Sufi gathers his robes and walks down the steps. Tomorrow, he says, we begin again. You linger, watching the faintest traces of starlight dissolve into dawn. The astrolabe in your hand feels warm now, alive with memory. You hold it against your chest and whisper to no one in particular, "We remember you." Somewhere beyond the horizon, the next culture is already looking up, ready to take the same measurements with different names. The same stars, the same longing, the same bare hands reaching through darkness for meaning. The scent of salt reaches you long before the shore does. You follow it westward through dry hills until the sound of gulls breaks over the horizon. The sea flashes silver. Wooden masts creak in the harbor. You've left the deserts and found the edge of the world, or at least what people here believe is the edge. This is an island in the Pacific, though the mapmakers of Baghdad have never drawn it. Palm trees bend in the wind. Out on the beach, canoes rest like sleeping animals, their hulls carved from single logs, polished by the sea. Men and women kneel in the sand, tracing lines with their fingers. The sky above them is a cathedral of stars so dense it feels like standing beneath spilled milk. You found the Polynesian navigators, the last great astronomers to work entirely by memory. A man with gray hair and ocean-weathered skin beckons you over. His name is Tui. He carries no paper, no instruments, not even a compass. But when he looks at the sky, you feel the same quiet confidence you saw in Babylon's priests and Baghdad's scholars. His hands move in small gestures, pointing, circling, pausing, as if conducting an orchestra only he can hear. He asks you to sit beside him. The sand is warm, the night humid and close. You see that line? He says, pointing to a curve of stars stretching from horizon to horizon. That is the road home. He calls it Kalani Polohiwa a Kanen, the sacred black path of Kanen, what you'll later know as the celestial equator. He doesn't use degrees, he uses stories. He starts naming them, not by mythic creatures or emperors, but by purpose. The navigator's seat, the shark's tooth, the canoe of souls. Each has a meaning, direction, season, current. The sky is not a map. It's an archive. Then he draws in the sand, arcs, circles, waves. Each curve mirrors a part of the sky. He places a small shell at the center. This is the island, he says. Around it, he arranges pebbles, each one a rising star. When the constellation called the Fishhook of Maui rises, it's time to set sail east. When the Southern Cross tilts, it's time to turn north. You realize you're watching someone construct a full navigational system out of memory, sand, and starlight. Historians still argue whether these methods were science or instinct. But as you sit beside Tui, you understand they're both. He knows the direction of the swell by the rhythm of waves hitting his canoe, the nearness of land by the color of the horizon, and the season by which stars twinkle most sharply. The ocean, he says, is a mirror turned upside down. If you can read the sky, you can read the sea. A young apprentice sits nearby, repeating the star names under his breath like a prayer. Tui corrects him once gently. Never forget, he says, the stars are alive. If you stop calling them, they forget their way back. You've heard that idea before. In different languages, different eras. Babylon called it divine order. Egypt called it ma'at. India called it Rita, China called it harmony. Here it's simply respect. At dawn, you join them on a canoe. The vessel rocks lightly in the tide, carved from dark wood that smells of resin and smoke. They push off with long paddles, silent except for the slap of water. Once the shore disappears, Tui raises his hand and begins to chant. A long, flowing rhythm of star names and wind directions. The sound blends with the sea until it's impossible to tell where voice ends and ocean begins. You try to keep track of direction, but quickly lose it. No compass, no map, no stars visible yet. Only Tui's calm voice, steady as a metronome. He tells you to close your eyes. Feel, he says. The swell comes from the east, but there's another beneath it, smaller, from the south. When they cross, that's your path. You can feel it, faint but real, the heartbeat of the ocean guiding the canoe. When night returns, the stars bloom again, brighter than you've ever seen. Tui points to a cluster near the horizon. That one there, Hokulea. You nod. He smiles. Our ancestors called it the Star of Joy. When it rises, we are almost home. You realize then that these navigators carry the same legacy as every astronomer before them. Not just knowledge, but trust. Trust that the world is knowable if you watch long enough, if you listen without fear. As the canoe glides across the open water, a shooting star arcs above you. Tui doesn't flinch. That's just a messenger, he says. Someone remembering us. By morning, land appears. A faint green shadow on the horizon. The crew cheers quietly. You feel tears prick your eyes, though you don't know why. Maybe because this, more than any observatory or temple, feels like the purest version of astronomy. A handful of people using nothing but memory, courage, and bare hands to find their way home. When you step onto the shore, Tui places a small piece of coral in your palm. Keep it, he says. It remembers the ocean's rhythm. The stars will understand. You nod, closing your fingers around it. The coral is cool, smooth, shaped like a question mark. You look up at the sky, now washed pale by sunrise, and you know, without calculation or proof, that the stars above have watched every journey, every question, every hand that ever reached toward them. The salt air fades behind you. You travel north again, over mountains wrapped in fog, to a place where the wind carries the smell of wet moss and iron bells. You arrive at a monastery perched on a cliff, a patch of stone and candlelight suspended between earth and sky. It is midnight, and the bells are ringing not for prayer, but for the moon. Inside, the air is thick with wax and ink. Monks in rough wool robes hunch over tables, copying pages by lamplight. Between the steady scratch of quills, you hear murmurs. Numbers, dates, predictions of eclipses. You've come to the medieval monasteries of Europe, where faith and curiosity share a single candle. A young monk greets you shyly. His hands are stained with ink, his eyes weary but kind. We keep the stars' confessions here, he says, showing you a shelf of thick hand-bound volumes. Each is a night, trapped in parchment, drawings of constellations, notes about comets, careful records of sunrise and moonrise. The church forbids fortune-telling, he adds, lowering his voice, but it does not forbid observation. He leads you to the roof, where the world falls away into silence. A cold wind rushes across the parapet, and the stars shimmer through thin clouds. The monk sets up a device so simple it feels like a child's toy. A stick fixed upright, its shadow measured against marked stones. You realize it's an early nocturnal, a tool for tracking time by the rotation of the Big Dipper. He shows you how the shadow moves, whispering each measurement as though reciting a psalm. When we ring the bells for matins, he explains, it must be the correct hour. The stars tell us when to pray. You glance upward. Somewhere between the cross and the dipper, the same stars the Maya used to time Venus are now keeping monks on schedule for midnight hymns. Different purposes, same patience. A bell clangs below, deep, slow, resonant. The sound vibrates through the stone beneath your feet. The monk smiles faintly. We call it the music of the spheres, he says, not because we hear it, but because we hope to. Down in the scriptorium, you find other brothers laboring over parchment. One is sketching the phases of the moon. Another is drawing diagrams of the sun's path through the zodiac. You can smell the faint tang of iron gall ink and candle smoke. Every few minutes, someone stops to blow dust from a page or stretch stiff fingers. You realize they're not just copying the past, they're archiving the sky for the future. In one corner, an older monk hums softly as he writes. You glance at his page and see it filled with Latin notes about an approaching eclipse. He's calculating its date, using tables from Al-Battani, an Arabic scholar whose work has crossed continents, translated and recopied by generations who never met. Knowledge, he says when he notices you looking, travels better than we do. Historians still argue whether the monks of this age were scientists or simply custodians, but watching them work, you see both. They measure time not to challenge God, but to honor creation. For them, the sky isn't a mystery to be solved. It's a manuscript to be illuminated. Later, in the refectory, you eat simple bread and broth with the brothers. Conversation drifts between scripture and weather. One monk complains about clouds interfering with observations. Another suggests it's divine punishment for impatience. They laugh quietly, breaking bread with the same hands that hold quills steady through the night. When the meal ends, they file silently back to their cells. You follow the young monk again to the roof. The night is colder now, the stars sharper. He points to a faint glow rising above the horizon. "That's no star," he says. "That's the candle of a new world, perhaps heaven reminding us it's not done creating." You stand together in silence, your breath misting in the dark. The wind carries a low hum, part sea, part stone, part centuries of whispered prayer. The monk closes his eyes, tracing a cross over his chest, and you realize something. The line between religion and science isn't a wall here, it's a seam. One side prays upward, the other calculates downward, but both are stitched by wonder. As dawn breaks, the first rays of sunlight slip through a narrow slit in the roof wall, landing perfectly on a carved mark in the stone floor. The monk kneels and murmurs, "Right, on time." You smile, realizing that even here, amid vows of silence and obedience, the stars still rule the schedule. You descend from the monastery as the bells ring again. Low, patient, endless. The morning fog curls through the valley like smoke. You look back once, seeing the tower framed against the fading stars. For a moment you imagine the sound of the bells drifting upward, echoing into space, a prayer written in mathematics. And you think, somewhere, centuries from now, another set of hands will still be measuring light, still marking shadows, still trusting the sky to tell the truth. The mountains fade behind you, and the land opens into wide plains brushed with wind. You ride west, past scattered villages where smoke curls thinly from chimneys until you reach a walled town crowned by towers of copper and glass. Here, the smell of the sea returns, mixed with the sharper scent of molten sand. Inside a workshop glowing with orange light, glassblowers are shaping the future without knowing it. They aren't astronomers. They're craftsmen, sweating over crucibles, trying to make glass clear enough for windows in cathedrals. But as you watch the molten blobs stretch into thin tubes, something else emerges. Clarity. Perfection. A glimmer of unintended destiny. A man enters, wiping soot from his hands. His name is Salvino, though he'll never be famous for what's happening here. He holds up a small convex lens, turning it in the light. The surface catches firelight and splits it into rainbows. He squints through it, laughs quietly, and says, "It makes the letters bigger." His apprentices grin. They've invented eyeglasses, but also, unknowingly, the foundation of every telescope yet to come. You walk through the city, Venice, or maybe Florence. It doesn't matter. What matters is that curiosity has found a new shape. Glass. Artisans begin experimenting, stacking lenses, combining convex with concave. Merchants carry them across Europe, selling magnifiers to jewelers and navigators. And somewhere, in the shadow of a cathedral, a curious monk lifts two lenses to his eye and looks not at a page, but at the moon. He sees craters, shadows, a texture that isn't divine, but real. His breath catches. For centuries, humanity has worshipped the moon as a perfect mirror of heaven, and now one piece of glass has ruined perfection. Historians will argue where the first telescope was truly made. Holland, Italy, Germany, each claims the spark. You know the truth is simpler. The sky was waiting for whoever finally looked hard enough. By the late 1500s, the world is hungry for light. Cities burn candles into the night. Merchants cross oceans guided by stars. Universities hum with new ideas that smell faintly of ink and rebellion. And somewhere in Poland, a quiet canon named Copernicus is writing in the half-dark. You find him there, hunched over a wooden table, candles melted into strange shapes. His manuscripts are a maze of circles and ratios, covered in annotations written in two languages, Latin for the world, Polish for himself. He's been at this for years, calculating, revising, hiding his heresy under the disguise of geometry. You watch him place a small model of the solar system on the table. Concentric rings, tiny wooden orbs, the sun at the center. He turns it slowly. The planets move, not in chaos, but in music. His eyes flicker with something between fear and pride. "It fits," he whispers. "It finally fits." You ask if he's sure. He gives a small, tired smile. Mathematics does not lie, but men do. He tucks the model away and hides the manuscript under his robe. He won't publish De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium for years. When he does, he'll dedicate it to the Pope, disguising a revolution as a gift. You realize that's how truth often travels, quietly in plain sight. Outside, the church bells toll. The sound rolls across the river and fades into the dusk. The stars appear one by one, indifferent to their rearrangement. You imagine them smirking. Humanity finally realizing what they've known forever, that Earth isn't the stage, just another actor. In the streets below, scholars argue, merchants drink, lovers meet. No one notices that the center of the universe has just shifted. It will take generations for the world to catch up, for people to stop pointing upward and thinking we're at the middle of it all. But tonight, Copernicus doesn't need them to understand. He leans out his window, looks up at the faint shimmer of Venus, and whispers a prayer, not of worship, but of relief. "Forgive us," he says, "for thinking you revolved around us." You walk away as the night deepens, the river reflecting the stars that now orbit nothing but their own gravity. The wind carries the faint scent of candle smoke and ink, signs of change, still smoldering. Behind you, Copernicus closes his window, unaware that his quiet revelation will ignite centuries of argument, exile, and wonder. The world will never again be the center of anything, and somehow that will make it infinitely larger. You step back into the flow of time, and the air itself feels heavier with tension. Europe is waking from its long medieval sleep, and curiosity, once whispered behind monastery walls, is beginning to shout. The streets hum with invention, printing presses clatter, maps unfold wider than kingdoms, and in every port city, telescopes are being sold like contraband hope. Tonight, you find yourself in a small Italian workshop that smells of sawdust and wine. A thin man with sharp eyes and ink-stained fingers bends over a wooden table, adjusting a brass tube fitted with two carefully ground lenses. The lamp beside him flickers, casting soft circles of light over piles of notes, sketches, and crumbs of bread. Galileo Galilei. He mutters to himself in Tuscan as he polishes the glass. You watch as he raises the instrument to the window, his hand trembling slightly. "Let's see if the heavens are as perfect as they say," he whispers. He points the telescope toward the moon. Silence stretches. Then a small sound escapes him, a soft, astonished laugh. "Mountains," he says. "Shadows." He turns to you, eyes bright. The moon has mountains. The heavens are not flawless after all. For hours, he barely moves. He shifts the telescope toward Jupiter, scribbles furiously, then adjusts it again. 4 tiny dots hover near the planet, arranged like attendants around a king. They move, night after night. Galileo names them the Medicean stars, after his patrons, but in his private notes he calls them what they truly are, moons. Proof that not everything revolves around Earth. You can feel the weight of that discovery pressing on the room, the invisible shift of 1,000 years of certainty collapsing in silence. Galileo doesn't celebrate. He just exhales slowly, like a man realizing the price of clarity. "They will call it heresy," he says quietly. "But what is faith worth if it fears truth?" Outside, the city sleeps under a sky that suddenly seems larger. The bells of Santa Croce toll midnight. The sound drifts through narrow streets, echoing off the stones that have stood since Rome believed the stars were gods. Now one man and a tube of glass have brought those gods down to earth. In the days that follow, you watch him show his telescope to scholars, merchants, even a few nervous priests. Some gasp, others refuse to look. One professor from Pisa scoffs. If Jupiter truly has moons, they'd have been mentioned in Scripture. Galileo smiles sadly. Perhaps Scripture was looking the other way. Historians still argue about that smile, whether it was defiance or pity. But you can see the exhaustion behind it. He knows what's coming. The Inquisition, the accusations, the long, humiliating trial. Yet he also knows the stars will outlast them all. You follow him into his study one evening as he writes letters to Kepler, to princes, to anyone who will listen. Mathematics, he writes, is the language in which God has written the universe. His candle gutters as he leans back, whispering the phrase again as if testing its balance. Then he chuckles softly, and people think Latin is hard. When dawn comes, you walk with him to the balcony. The hills of Tuscany roll out beneath a pale sky. He raises his telescope one last time, not toward the heavens, but toward the horizon. We've been looking upward for too long, he says. Perhaps the miracle is that we can see it all. He lowers the telescope and looks at you. Promise me something, he says. Never let them make the stars smaller than they are. You nod, though you don't need to promise. It's already impossible. Later, when the guards arrive, he doesn't resist. They lead him away through quiet streets, his invention tucked under his arm like a forbidden book. The people watch from doorways, whispering prayers, some for his soul, some for their own courage. You remain behind, alone on his balcony, the telescope still warm from his hands. The morning light fills the glass, scattering into tiny rainbows. You lift it, hesitating, then aim it back at the sky. The craters of the moon leap into focus. You can almost see his fingerprints smudged on the lens. You whisper his name to the wind, and the sound seems to echo across centuries, soft but unbroken, like the hum of the cosmos itself, repeating the vow he made with every observation. Even if they silence the man, the stars will continue to speak. The world doesn't end when they silence Galileo. It changes direction. You feel the momentum shifting beneath your feet like a tide turning in slow motion. His trial ends, but the questions he opened can't be sealed away. They drift across borders, hidden in letters, whispered in salons, carried by merchants and dreamers who smuggle curiosity like contraband. You follow one such letter north, through France, across the Channel, into a damp English garden where the air smells of apples and thunder. A young man sits alone beneath a tree, scribbling equations onto a scrap of parchment. His hair is a mess, his clothes too fine for the dirt under his nails. Isaac Newton looks up from his notes only when the wind moves the branches above him. He doesn't notice you at first. His mind is elsewhere, on the arc of planets, the fall of fruit, the way everything seems to obey invisible laws. The orchard hums with bees, and he whispers to himself, almost absently, "If the moon falls, why not the apple?" You step closer. On the ground beside him lies a crude prism, the glass catching light from the low afternoon sun. He lifts it, turns it carefully, and a sudden rainbow bursts across his face. "It's not divine color," he murmurs, eyes wide. "It's math. The spectrum is hidden in every beam." You realize, watching him, that curiosity has evolved. Once, humans sought the heavens to worship them. Now they're dissecting the light of creation itself. Night falls. Newton lights a candle and keeps working. Pages pile around him, covered in the wild language of geometry. Symbols, curves, spirals. He mutters under his breath as if in prayer. If the same force that draws the apple also keeps the moon in motion, then perhaps. He pauses, his quill trembling. Perhaps all the universe is bound by one thread. Historians will later call it gravity, but in this moment it's still just a thought, a flicker of genius too delicate to name. You watch him test it, writing out a formula so compact it seems impossible that it could describe so much. When he finishes, he leans back, exhausted. "So simple," he says softly, "and yet everything obeys." He stares upward through the orchard branches. The stars look close tonight, almost conspiratorial. You imagine them smiling faintly as if to say, finally. Over the next days, you trail him through Cambridge's narrow halls where arguments bloom like wildflowers. Scholars debate whether light is a wave or a particle, whether motion needs a mover, whether the cosmos is clockwork or chaos. Newton listens to none of them. He spends his nights grinding lenses, experimenting with mirrors, inventing the reflecting telescope because refracting ones never satisfied him. One evening, you find him asleep at his desk. Candle burned down to its stub, ink on his cuffs. His notes spill across the table, covered in diagrams of orbits and prisms. On one page, in careful script, he's written, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." You look closer. In those words, you can see everyone you've met, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Maya, Hypatia, Al-Sufi, Galileo. Every hand that reached upward made the next reach possible. When he wakes, dawn is breaking. He stretches, then pours tea that's long gone cold. "The world is predictable," he says suddenly. "Elegant, but not simple. The deeper you look, the more you realize it was never designed for comfort." He glances at you with a half smile. "But that's fine. Comfort never discovered anything." Outside, the air is wet with morning. You walk with him through the orchard one last time. He stops beside the same tree where the apple fell and gazes at the sky. "We used to think the heavens were divine," he says. "Now we know they're lawful. I'm not sure which is more terrifying." You laugh quietly, and he does too. The sound feels strange coming from him, but real. Later, as he gathers his notes for what will become the Principia Mathematica, you realize how far humanity has come. From measuring shadows to measuring the universe itself. From guessing to proving. From awe to understanding. And back again. When you leave him, the orchard is silent, except for the wind. The apple tree sways gently, scattering blossoms like falling stars. You look up through its branches at the pale morning sky and think of Galileo's promise. The stars haven't stopped speaking. They've simply learned a new language, mathematics. You whisper to the air, to the countless minds who will follow. Keep listening, because somewhere above this very orchard, unseen and inevitable, gravity hums. The same song it sang when the first hands reached for the heavens, and the same song it will sing long after the last. You cross into a new century, and it smells of oil and ink. The world is louder now. Printing presses groan, cities expand like restless thoughts, and observatories sprout on every hilltop like stone flowers. The stars, once the domain of priests and poets, are becoming data points. Humanity, it seems, has learned how to turn wonder into paperwork. You find yourself in Paris, the heart of this awakening. The year is somewhere in the late 1700s, though it hardly matters. What matters is the noise, the chatter of mathematicians, the ringing of bells from nearby workshops, the sound of arguments spilling into cafes. Here, astronomy has become fashionable. It's discussed over wine. You walk into the Paris Observatory just as night falls. The air smells faintly of brass and parchment. Telescopes glint under candlelight, their polished lenses pointed through open windows. At one end of the hall, a woman adjusts an instrument taller than she is. She's dressed simply, her hair pinned back, her sleeves rolled up past her elbows. Caroline Herschel. She doesn't look like a scientist by the standards of her time. She looks like someone who simply refused to stop learning. When she sees you, she smiles briefly, then returns to the eyepiece. "Another comet, I think," she says softly. Or perhaps the same one pretending to be new. She sketches quickly in her notebook, tracing faint arcs that map the movement of the wandering light. Each flick of her pen feels like defiance. For every woman silenced or dismissed, this small sound, ink on paper, is rebellion. Her brother William enters a few minutes later, carrying a candle and smelling faintly of metal shavings. "You're still at it," he teases. She shrugs. "The sky doesn't sleep. Why should I?" Together they adjust their homemade telescope, one built from salvaged parts and persistence. Through it they see things no one else has, New nebulae, comets, entire worlds shimmering faintly beyond Saturn. When Caroline gasps, you glance through the lens and see it too, a patch of misty light, fragile and immense. "It's not a star," she murmurs. "It's hundreds of them." Historians will later call it the discovery of deep space. For now, it's just a quiet exhale in the dark. You stay with them for weeks, watching the rhythm of their work. Sleep by dawn, calculations by noon, observations by dusk. Their garden smells of dew and coal smoke, their windows lined with notebooks. Some nights are lost to clouds, others to laughter. Once, Caroline burns her sleeve on a candle and laughs so hard she cries. The stars are distant, but the work feels human, messy, warm, full of tea stains and persistence. One evening, as frost glitters over the grass, she asks you a strange question. "Do you think the universe ever looks back at us?" You pause. "If it does," you say, "it must be very proud." She smiles, though there's a sadness in it too. "Or very patient," she says. "We take so long to understand." When you leave the Herschels, the wind smells like iron and snow. Across Europe, telescopes are multiplying, observatories spreading across mountaintops like silver mushrooms. In Berlin, men argue about the motion of planets. In Paris, Laplace drafts his celestial mechanics, building equations so precise they make gravity predictable. In London, John Flamsteed maps the sky until it aches his eyes. Each of them thinks they're correcting the heavens, but really they're stitching together everything that came before. You travel next to Greenwich, where the air tastes of salt and smoke. The Royal Observatory stands above the Thames, its clock ticking with the heartbeat of an empire. Inside, a man named Edmund Halley, older now, his hair wild as starlight, leans over a telescope. "I told them it would return," he mutters, eyes glinting. "Comets don't wander, they remember." He's right. The comet he predicted comes back exactly as he said it would, faithful to his mathematics. You can almost hear it slicing through the upper atmosphere, a brief line of fire carrying his name forever. You realize then that something fundamental has shifted. The stars are no longer gods, nor symbols, nor omens. They are systems, predictable, faithful, and yet in becoming knowable they have not lost their beauty. They've gained something else, intimacy. You know where they will be tomorrow. You can count on them. At the edge of dawn, you stand outside the observatory, your breath a faint ghost in the cold air. The Thames glimmers below. Overhead, the sky fades from black to blue, erasing the stars one by one. You close your eyes and imagine all the hands that have written, measured, and believed, from clay tablets to ink pens, from temples to telescopes. And somewhere, above the noise of industry and the hum of mathematics, the universe hums the same old tune, patient, infinite, waiting for the next set of eyes to lift toward it. By the time you reach the 1800s, the world has learned to worship progress as it once worshipped gods. Steam and soot replace incense. Telescopes gleam like cannons pointed at eternity. You cross continents on trains that howl through darkness and emerge in cities lit by gaslight, where science has become spectacle. In London, the night sky is hazy with smoke, but inside the Royal Society, the stars burn bright through math and argument. Men in wool coats debate over brandy, their voices rising with each discovery. You stand quietly in a corner, watching a young man unroll a chart that looks like a galaxy frozen in ink. "These aren't drawings," he says proudly. "They're photographs. Astrophotography has arrived. The first time you see it, you can hardly breathe. A long exposure image of the moon, grainy, fragile, but real. No more guessing, no more sketches. The heavens can now be captured. For thousands of years, people have drawn what they saw. Now they will see what they draw." You travel north to Scotland, where the air tastes of iron and rain. In a lonely observatory on a windswept hill, a man named James Clerk Maxwell stares at a slate covered in symbols. His hair is wild, his eyes tired. You arrive just as he's explaining his latest equation to a bewildered assistant. "Light," he says, tapping the board, "is a wave. Electricity, magnetism, they're the same dance." The assistant blinks. Then the stars sing in frequencies, Maxwell interrupts, smiling faintly. Yes, we just don't have ears fine enough to hear them. Historians still argue whether he realized the poetry of what he'd written, but you see it clearly. For the first time, light has been tamed, defined, described. From now on, humanity won't just look at the stars, they'll listen to them. You move on, chasing the growing hum of the industrial age. Across Europe, observatories sprout like cathedrals. Paris, Greenwich, Vienna, Mount Wilson. Huge domes turn with the grace of planets, each hiding telescopes so massive they could swallow every earlier invention whole. You stand beside one, watching engineers crank iron gears until the lens points toward a faint spiral in the night. The astronomer beside you whispers, "That's the Whirlpool Galaxy. We think it's another island universe." You lean closer to the eyepiece and see it. A swirl of mist and light, that delicate as a fingerprint. It looks alive. The astronomer exhales sharply. "If there are other worlds like ours," he says, "perhaps their astronomers are watching us too." He laughs softly at his own blasphemy, then returns to adjusting the scope. The machine groans. The stars shift. You realize that every new discovery makes the world bigger and humans smaller, but somehow they never seem discouraged by that. In the late century, you find yourself under the cold, thin air of the Andes. The American astronomer Maria Mitchell stands beside a telescope, her face half lit by starlight. She's teaching a group of young women, showing them how to chart the paths of comets. Her voice is calm, assured, utterly without apology. "You must trust your eyes," she tells them. "Not every truth has been found by men." Her students nod, their notebooks trembling slightly in the cold. You glance at the sky above, so high it seems hollow, and feel the quiet revolution happening here, women claiming the heavens as their own. Later in Harvard, you watch another revolution unfold in silence. Inside a dusty office filled with shelves of glass photographic plates, a group of women, the Harvard computers, work methodically, cataloging the brightness of stars. One of them, Annie Jump Cannon, holds a magnifying glass up to the plates, her eyes narrowing. "There's order here," she murmurs. "O, B, A, F, G, K, M." You blink. "What is that?" "A pattern," she says, smiling. "A language the stars use when they burn." She's classifying stellar spectra, turning chaos into taxonomy, assigning letters to temperatures, colors, lives. Centuries from now, every astronomy student will memorize her sequence, but tonight it's just another quiet act of patience. As the century closes, you travel west once more, across the Atlantic, to a mountain above Pasadena. The wind howls through the observatory dome like a restless ghost. Inside, George Ellery Hale leans over blueprints for a new telescope, one so enormous that his colleagues call it impossible. He simply smiles. So is everything else. He dreams of a mirror wide enough to see galaxies like cities, of instruments that can photograph the birth of stars. Around him, the hum of machinery feels almost sacred. You realize this too is worship. Worship of precision, of the idea that the universe can be understood if you just make the lens big enough. When you step outside, the wind carries the smell of pine and steel. The night is clear. You can see the arc of the Milky Way stretching from horizon to horizon, serene and ancient. You remember Babylon's clay tablets, Egypt's Merkats, Hypatia's sphere, Galileo's trembling hands, and feel the thread connecting them all. For a long while, you just stand there, letting the cold bite your cheeks, your breath forming small clouds that vanish into the dark. You whisper to the stars, "You must be tired of being discovered." They don't answer, of course. They only shine, unchanged, unhurried, endlessly patient, as another century begins its climb toward them. The new century opens with a hush that feels like held breath. Humanity has built machines so powerful they can stare farther into darkness than any priest, poet, or dreamer ever dared. The domes of observatories gleam on mountaintops like silver eyes. Inside them, the air smells of oil and frost, and the stars appear not as myths, but as data. You step into one such dome high above California, where Edwin Hubble stands beside a monstrous telescope, his breath visible in the cold. The Mount Wilson Observatory hums faintly, its machinery moving with the slow precision of a heartbeat. Hubble adjusts the lens, checks his notes, and mutters, "That smudge there. It's moving." He's not looking at a star. He's looking at Andromeda, a faint whirl of light so far away that even the word distance begins to lose meaning. When he measures its motion, he frowns, then smiles. The galaxy isn't static, it's rushing away. Everything is. He leans back, whispering to himself, "The universe is expanding." You can almost hear the sound of the cosmos stretching, a quiet sigh that's been going on since time began. The stars aren't fixed points after all. They're travelers. You imagine how that realization must feel, like discovering that home is moving beneath your feet. The night sky, once a dome of eternal light, is now an explosion frozen in motion. Historians still argue whether Hubble understood the enormity of what he'd found. But you see it, a new kind of wonder, the kind that humbles, the kind that makes every prior map of the universe look like a child's drawing in the sand. A few years later, the world goes to war. The night sky glows again, but not from stars. Fire replaces starlight. The great observatories go dark. Scientists are drafted to build weapons instead of telescopes. Yet even amid destruction, curiosity survives. Somewhere in a dim lab, a physicist sketches equations on a blackboard and glances upward through the smoke-stained glass. In post-war America, the space age begins quietly, with a whistle in the desert. A rocket rises from white sand and disappears into blue, the first human-made object to touch the edge of space. The air trembles. The dream resumes. You watch as telescopes grow smaller and smarter. Machines now take the place of eyes. Mirrors orbit the Earth. In 1990, the Hubble Space Telescope unfurls its solar panels like wings and begins to look outward with unblinking calm. Its images arrive pixel by pixel, galaxies spiraling like storms, nebulae glowing like underwater creatures. For the first time, humanity can see the universe without atmosphere or distortion. The clarity is almost cruel. One night, you hover behind a NASA engineer watching a new image come into focus. It's the pillars of creation, vast towers of dust and light rising through space like cathedral columns. "We're seeing star nurseries," the engineer whispers, "places where suns are born." You stay there long after everyone leaves, staring at the glowing shapes on the monitor. They look ancient and fragile, like fingerprints of gods long gone. Time moves faster now. Radio telescopes bloom in deserts and on frozen plains. The Very Large Array in New Mexico spreads its arms across the sand, listening to the whispers of pulsars, dead stars still spinning with impossible rhythm. In Puerto Rico, the great dish of Arecibo hums through humid nights, bouncing signals into the void. Someone sends the first message to the stars, a binary greeting etched in radio waves. You think about the first astronomers tracing constellations with their fingers and smile. They once tried to speak to the stars with stories. Now humanity tries again with mathematics. And then in 2015, a faint tremor ripples through space-time itself. Gravitational waves, proof that even the universe's fabric can shudder. You imagine Galileo smiling somewhere beyond reach, whispering, "Told you it moves." Every discovery seems to bring the stars closer and farther at once. They are now mapped, measured, simulated, yet they remain untouchable. You realize that for all our progress, humans still do what they've always done, stare upward and wonder what's staring back. Late one night, you stand alone on a mountaintop. Below, the city glows like a circuit board. Above, the sky is silent, scattered with fire from 1 billion years ago. You hold your hand up to it, palm open, as if you might feel the pulse of creation through your skin. The wind moves softly, smelling of frost and old metal. You whisper to the darkness, "We finally reached you." But the stars, patient as ever, whisper back only through light delayed by eternity. You wait for that reply in silence, but none comes. Just the endless hum of the night. The stars shimmer like distant campfires, their light arriving after lifetimes, carrying memories of everything that ever was. You wonder how many eyes before yours have stared at them with the same question and how many will after. The wind sharpens, cold and thin at this altitude. Far below, the hum of the world persists. Trains gliding through valleys, ships crossing oceans, cities glowing in patterns that mimic constellations. Humanity has begun to make its own stars, scattered across the surface of Earth. For the first time, you realize the heavens are no longer only above. You turn and see a dome opening on the next ridge, metal petals unfolding to reveal another telescope. Inside, scientists in thick jackets lean over consoles, their screens filled with images of faint red light. They are hunting for exoplanets now, worlds orbiting other suns. Not gods, not myths, not distant dreams, but places, real measurable waiting. One of the scientists waves you in. You step into the warmth of computers and coffee. On a monitor, a pixel blinks in a black sea. "That's it," she whispers, "a planet about the size of Earth, 40 light years away." She smiles, weary but radiant. We're not alone anymore. We're just far. Outside, dawn begins to bleed into the horizon, soft and pale. You walk out into the growing light. The stars fade one by one, swallowed by the rising sun, but their ghosts linger, a reminder of how long they've guided every hand, every eye, every hope. You think of the Babylonians marking clay, the Egyptians aligning stones, the monks measuring shadows, the navigators reading waves, the scholars of Baghdad polishing brass, Galileo trembling at his lens, Newton under the apple tree, Herschel sketching comets, Hubble whispering expanding, and the engineers decoding starlight from computers orbiting in silence. The story is one unbroken gaze, one human thread stretching across millennia, drawn always upward. And now, as light floods the mountaintop, that gaze turns forward, toward the unknown, toward whatever waits beyond the next horizon. You take a slow breath. The air tastes of dawn and metal, of endings that are really beginnings. The universe feels enormous again, but also strangely intimate, as if it's been watching you too. You smile faintly and whisper, "We're still looking." And somewhere, scattered across all that distance, the stars, those ancient mirrors, keep shining back in quiet agreement. The day stretches into gold, then fades again into the soft indigo of another night. You've been walking for hours, though time feels strange now, elastic, almost fluid. The road has brought you to a desert, the kind where the air vibrates with silence. The horizon is flat as paper, the sky enormous. It's here, away from cities and noise, that you can see everything. The Milky Way arches overhead, a frozen river of light. You lie down on the sand, the warmth of the day still seeping up through your back. The stars seem close enough to touch. You lift your hand and trace the faint smudges between constellations, the dark lanes of dust and gas where stars are born. You realize that every shimmer you see is both ancient and ongoing, light from something that may already be gone. Far off, a cluster of domes glints on a mountaintop, the next generation of observatories. You imagine the people inside, their screens glowing, their headphones crackling with signals from telescopes that no longer need eyes. Machines now look deeper than any human ever could, scanning microwave radiation, tracing the faint afterglow of creation itself. You picture the cosmic background map, soft ripples of heat left over from the Big Bang. The first breath of the universe, caught by human instruments billions of years later. For a moment, it feels like eavesdropping on God. The sand shifts under you as the wind picks up. You close your eyes and listen to it hiss, the same sound that might have surrounded the first people who looked up and gave names to stars. Everything since then, glass lenses, equations, satellites, has been just a more precise way of whispering the same thing. We want to understand. Hours pass. The night deepens until even silence has weight. Then, faintly, you see a trail of light sweep across the sky. A satellite, maybe, or the International Space Station catching the sun. You watch it move steadily, almost tenderly, across the constellations your ancestors once imagined as gods and beasts. Humanity has joined the stars now, metal and willpower orbiting in the cold. Soon there will be colonies, telescopes on the moon, rovers drilling into Martian dust, and probes sailing into interstellar night. You picture Voyager, still traveling, still whispering its golden record into emptiness. Our pulse encoded in binary, our music and laughter flung into eternity. You think of those first astronomers again, mapping the heavens with bare hands, not knowing what a galaxy was, or gravity, or time dilation, and yet they reached upward anyway, believing that the pattern of the stars mattered, that understanding them meant understanding ourselves. You realize they were right. A meteor splits the sky, burns white, and vanishes. You don't make a wish, you don't need to. Everything they ever wished for has already begun. The wind softens again, the desert exhales. You stay there until dawn, watching the stars fade into a pink horizon. The first light touches your face, gentle and familiar. And in that moment, between night and morning, between wonder and understanding, you know that the search will never end. It doesn't need to. The sky has always been less about finding answers and more about remembering to look. You rise slowly, brushing the sand from your clothes, and take one last look at the horizon before the sun claims it. The stars are gone now, invisible behind the brightness of day, but you know they're still there, waiting, watching, shining just the same. You smile to yourself and whisper, "Until tonight." Then you walk on, leaving footprints that the wind will soon erase, but a trail that somehow the universe will remember. The path bends toward civilization again. After nights of silence, the hum of human life feels almost like music. You pass through towns where telescopes have become ordinary, mounted in backyards, aimed by children whose fingers are sticky with juice boxes, their eyes wide and unafraid. It feels right. The stars, once reserved for priests and philosophers, now belong to everyone. In a park, you see a father showing his daughter the moon through a small telescope. "That bright spot," he says, "that's Tycho Crater, a mountain higher than any on Earth." The girl giggles, leans closer, and whispers, "Can they see us too?" He hesitates, then smiles. Maybe. That word, maybe, hangs in the air like a bridge. It's the oldest human invention. You keep walking. Across continents and time zones, observatories glow softly on mountaintops, satellites sweep invisible arcs overhead, and classrooms buzz with new voices asking old questions. Everywhere, the same instinct survives: to measure, to map, to dream. You visit one of the new space agencies, where rooms hum with machinery and faint blue light. A woman sits at a console, guiding a telescope that orbits a star you can't even pronounce. "We think there's an atmosphere," she says, pointing at the readout. "Maybe clouds, maybe water." She pauses, then grins. "Maybe someone looking back." The room is quiet except for the beeping of instruments. It feels almost like church. You glance at the monitors, worlds painted in pixels, each one glowing faintly, impossibly far. Outside, the sky has changed color. It's no longer the deep black of ancient nights, but a soft electric haze, blurred by city light. Yet the stars still pierce through, stubborn and clear. You find yourself thinking that maybe that's the truest image of humanity. Our brightness rising into theirs, our noise brushing against their silence. You walk until the city fades again, replaced by open sky. You lie on your back, the earth cool beneath you, and think of the hands that built all this. The ones that chipped stone, polished brass, ground glass, soldered wires, code algorithms. Every era has had its tools, its prophets, its dreamers. You realize the difference between a myth and a measurement is smaller than it seems. Both begin with wonder. Above you, a shooting star traces a line across the dark. It's brief, but perfect. A reminder that even endings can look like beginnings when seen from the right angle. You whisper, "We've come so far," and it feels like speaking to someone. Maybe the universe, maybe the reflection of every person who ever looked up and felt small but curious. The air is cold. but the thought warms you that the same atoms in your breath were once inside stars, that your eyes are literally made of what you're watching. You are not separate from the cosmos. You are the cosmos remembering itself. And that perhaps is what all of astronomy has been trying to say from the start. The sky begins to pale again. You close your eyes, the faint hum of satellites echoing above you, and let the sound blend with your heartbeat. For the first time, it's impossible to tell where humanity ends and the universe begins. You smile, not out of triumph, but out of quiet belonging. The journey of the stars isn't over. It never will be. Because as long as someone, somewhere, still looks up and feels that same slow pull toward the unknown, the story continues. The horizon turns from silver to rose, and the first warmth of sunlight touches your face. You blink against it, feeling the quiet fatigue of centuries in your bones. All those nights, ancient fires, ink-stained scrolls, brass circles, glass lenses, humming computers, they have all led here, to a dawn that looks almost exactly like the first one anyone ever watched. You stand, brushing the dew from your hands. The world below hums faintly. Cars, power lines, wind turbines. Above, the sky stretches clean and endless. For the first time, you realize that humanity has not conquered the heavens. It has joined them. You walk toward a low hill where children are setting up a small telescope. It's flimsy, the kind you might buy with saved allowance, and yet the scene feels sacred. One boy squints through the eyepiece. "It's blurry," he complains. Another, slightly older, adjusts the focus until Jupiter snaps into view, its moons lined up like pearls. They both gasp. "It's real." You smile because that sentence, those two simple words, has been whispered for thousands of years. It's real. The proof that belief and observation can touch. Nearby, their teacher stands watching the sunrise, her hands deep in her pockets. "They always think they'll see aliens," she says softly. "But then they see themselves." You nod because you know exactly what she means. As the light strengthens, the stars vanish, but you can still feel them, like pulse beats just under the skin of the sky. You think of how much light must travel to reach this moment, how many human eyes it has passed through along the way. In another century, maybe they'll send ships beyond the solar system, entire generations born among the stars. Maybe they'll land on worlds we can't imagine and build new myths beneath alien constellations. Or maybe they'll simply keep looking up from new skies, tracing familiar shapes in unfamiliar stars, whispering the same names in new languages. The future feels vast, but gentle. You realize that the story of astronomy was never about distance or even discovery. It was about continuity. Every person who's ever looked upward has joined the same conversation. You glance at the children again. The telescope shakes slightly as they trade turns, breathless with excitement. Their laughter carries on the morning wind, light and warm. You tilt your head back one last time, the sun now bright enough to wash the world in gold. The stars are hidden, but you know better. They're still there, patient as ever, waiting for night to fall again. You whisper, barely loud enough for the wind to steal. "Keep going. They're still listening." And with that, you turn away, the sound of children's laughter following you down the hill, blending with the slow heartbeat of a planet that still dares to dream of the stars. The laughter fades behind you, but its echo lingers like a pulse. You walk toward a stretch of open land where wind moves through tall grass, bending it into ripples. There's a launch pad in the distance, gleaming silver under the sunlight. It looks strangely fragile against the immensity of the sky, just scaffolding and hope. People are gathering there, their faces turned upward. A countdown murmurs through the air, soft but electric. Somewhere inside that tower sits a small capsule, metal skin, wires, and quiet bravery. Inside, a crew waits, hands trembling slightly in their gloves, breaths loud in their helmets. When the engines ignite, the earth seems to shudder beneath you. A roar builds, not frightening but monumental, the sound of every question humanity ever asked condensed into fire. The rocket rises, shedding gravity grain by grain. A collective gasp ripples through the crowd, and for one dizzying moment, the sky opens its arms and lets them through. You watch until the flame becomes a star among stars, until there's no way to tell which light is theirs and which belongs to the universe. You think of the first people who feared the heavens, who thought the stars were unreachable or divine. Now, humanity is inside them. Later, when night returns, you find yourself by the ocean. The water glows faintly with bioluminescence, tiny sparks flickering in rhythm with the tide. Above, satellites move in quiet procession, man-made constellations tracing invisible paths across the dark. You realize that even the sea, once an endless horizon, has become a reflection of the cosmos. Waves below, galaxies above, both breathing, both alive. You lie back on the sand, the cool grains shifting beneath you. The stars wheel slowly across the sky, steady and indifferent, but somehow tender. You think of all the names humans have given them: guides, gods, homes, destinations. And then you think of how each name, no matter how small, was an act of love. The ocean whispers at your feet. You close your eyes and picture those astronauts above the atmosphere, watching Earth shrink into a blue curve, its clouds glowing like silver thread. From there, no borders exist. No temples, no wars, no noise, just one fragile sphere wrapped in light. You imagine what they must feel: awe, loneliness, pride, fear, and something quieter, something older. The same feeling the first stargazer must have had when tracing constellations on cave walls. The knowledge that to look outward is also to look inward. The tide creeps closer, cool against your ankles. The stars overhead begin to blur with mist, but you don't move. You let the sound of the waves sync with your heartbeat. The cosmos hums in rhythm, an old song still being written. And you understand, finally, that the story of the stars was never about reaching them. It was about remembering we belong to them. Every breath, every spark, every heartbeat is the same pattern, the same pulse that began when the universe itself inhaled for the first time. You open your eyes again. The rocket's trail is gone, but its echo lingers across the horizon, a faint silver line fading into eternity. Somewhere beyond sight, the crew keeps climbing, the earth keeps spinning, and the stars keep shining, unchanged and eternal. You whisper, "We made it this far." The wind carries your voice out over the sea, scattering it among the waves, among the stars. And for a heartbeat, just one, you could swear the universe whispers back. The sound of the sea fades, replaced by something softer, the low hum of wind through glass. You open your eyes to find yourself not on a beach, but within a vast circular chamber high above the clouds. The walls are transparent, curved panels of tempered glass looking out onto the cosmos. It takes you a moment to realize where you are: an orbital observatory, humanity's newest cathedral. Inside, the air smells faintly of metal and recycled oxygen. Panels glow with quiet blue light. Screens display constellations that shift as the station moves. There's no up or down here, just an endless sweep of black dotted with light. You feel yourself float slightly, your body lighter than memory. A scientist drifts past, tablet in hand, her hair fanning around her head. "We're mapping exoplanet atmospheres tonight," she says, not looking up. "There's a world out there with a violet sky and silver oceans. Can you imagine?" You nod, though you can't quite speak. The earth rotates slowly below, clouds coiling like paint in water, the continents barely visible through the shimmer of auroras. From this height, you can see entire storms swirl into being. It's so beautiful that it hurts a little. She smiles faintly at your silence. "You know," she says, "we used to think the universe revolved around us. Now we revolve around it. And that's so much better." Her voice fades as she glides toward another viewport. You press your palm to the glass. The stars outside don't twinkle here. They burn steady and sharp, each one a silent engine. You can see the faint glow of the Milky Way stretching in a soft arc, a reminder that even the grandest things in existence are made of dust and repetition. Historians will someday write that this was the age when humanity finally learned how to listen properly. Not with telescopes, but with sensors tuned to frequencies older than time, ripples in gravity, whispers in radiation, the echoes of the first stars that ever lived. Every instrument on this station is an ear pressed to the heartbeat of creation. You drift near a console showing a spectrum analysis, a long wave of color that pulses gently across the screen. A technician notices your curiosity and murmurs, "That's the afterglow of a supernova," light from a star that died before Earth even existed. He turns a knob and the data transforms into sound, a faint, mournful hum that rises and falls like breathing. You listen for a long time, feeling it more than hearing it. It's not sad, exactly. It's the sound of endurance, of transformation. You think of how stars die so others can be born, how that same process created the carbon in your body, the oxygen in your lungs. The universe is not cruel, it's continuous. As the station completes another orbit, sunlight floods the chamber. It's blinding at first, then golden, then almost liquid. The earth below gleams blue and white, impossibly alive. You realize that if someone were looking this way from another star, the planet would appear as just a pale dot, a flicker among billions. And yet that flicker contains music, laughter, cities, stories, and every question ever asked. You close your eyes and breathe deeply. There's a peace in knowing that nothing has been wasted. Not the mistakes, not the centuries of fumbling curiosity, not the countless nights spent staring upward. Every era was a version of this view, every tool a way of saying we are trying to understand. As night returns to your side of orbit, you float by the glass again. Somewhere far beyond, a new dawn is lighting another world. The same story beginning again. You smile, letting the stars fill your reflection. "We never stopped mapping," you whisper. "We just found new ways to hold the sky, and for the first time, it feels like the universe understands." Hours pass. The earth turns beneath you in silence, a slow blue swirl framed by shadow. Somewhere below, dawn touches another continent, lighting mountains, rivers, forests, and countless eyes just waking, unaware that they too are part of this same orbiting miracle. The observatory hums gently. A new team drifts in to begin their shift, voices low and calm. You watch as they check data streams, calibrate sensors, and adjust the telescopes that peer not outward, but backward, toward the universe's earliest light. A young researcher catches your eye. "We're looking at the first galaxies," he says quietly, as though he might startle them. "They're faint, just wisps, but they're there." He brings up an image. It's not what you expect. No spirals or color, just tiny specks, soft as breath, suspended in black. You realize you're looking at something 13 billion years old, the beginning of everything that would become stars, planets, oceans, cities. You whisper. "So that's how it started." He nods. "That's how we started." His voice carries the weight of reverence. Every atom in your body was forged by those first suns. You let the thought sink in, that the hydrogen in your veins once drifted through space, that the calcium in your bones was born in stellar collapse, that looking outward is really just looking home. He smiles faintly, turning back to his screen. "The funny thing," he says, "Friday, is we thought we'd run out of mysteries by now, but the deeper we look, the stranger it gets." He's right. Somewhere in the dark, black holes hum at frequencies lower than sound. Pulsars blink like cosmic lighthouses. Galaxies collide slowly, creating storms of new stars. And far beyond what any lens can see, space itself expands, stretching the universe thinner, colder, quieter. You drift back to the window. The Milky Way stretches across the void like a soft scar of light. You imagine all those civilizations, perhaps too distant to ever meet, each staring upward from their own world, each asking the same small questions. For a moment, it's easy to believe that thought itself is a kind of gravity, pulling every curious being across time toward the same truth, that we're not separate from the stars. We are their echo. Outside, a flare of light catches your eye. A satellite, perhaps. or a ship on its way farther still. Humans keep building machines that outlast them, voyagers that never sleep, carrying fragments of our story written in metal and code. Somewhere, one of those crafts is already past Pluto, its signal weak but steady. It will travel for thousands of years, long after our languages fade, still whispering the same message into the dark. We were here. You press your palm against the glass again, feeling the vibration of the station beneath your fingertips. It's faint, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. You wonder if the universe has one too. As the Earth slides into shadow again, its cities bloom with light. The night side glows with constellations of its own, human constellations, each point a life, a breath, a dream. It looks impossibly like the sky itself turned upside down. And then, very quietly, you laugh. Because maybe that's all it ever was. An endless reflection, light meeting light, curiosity folding back on itself forever. You stay there until the next sunrise washes the world in gold, until the stars vanish one by one. Somewhere deep inside, you can feel the old rhythm of it all. The same rhythm that started in fire and silence and has carried through every mind that ever looked up and wondered. It doesn't end here. It never does. The journey continues not with rockets or telescopes, but in every heartbeat that still dares to ask what else might be waiting out there. You take a slow breath, the stars still glowing faintly behind your eyelids, and think, we have always been the universe learning to see itself. And for the first time, you feel the comfort of that truth. Vast, quiet, infinite. The station drifts on through the soft black ocean, sunlight and shadow taking turns across its hull. Below, the Earth glows with slow confidence, a single pulse of blue against the darkness. You linger by the window as a new sound hums faintly through the observatory, an alert tone, calm but insistent. They've received a signal, someone says behind you. The words are nearly a whisper. You turn to see a small cluster of scientists gathered around a console. On the screen, a string of repeating numbers, faint but precise, like fingers tapping in rhythm. It's not random. It's not noise. The room holds its breath. Could be a pulsar, one murmurs, or an echo from our own transmissions, says another. But then the pattern shifts, slows, accelerates, stops, begins again. No one moves. It isn't an answer. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it's something. A reminder that even silence has texture. That the universe, for all its enormity, still leaves room for the possibility of reply. You feel your chest tighten, not with fear, but with recognition. This is what every astronomer, every priest, every wanderer has waited for since the first firelit nights. A sound in the distance. Proof that we are not speaking into emptiness. The signal fades as mysteriously as it arrived. The scientists sit quietly, blinking at their screens. No one says we found them. No one says we didn't. Someone simply exhales, it's beautiful. The room relaxes and data begins to stream again. But you keep your eyes on the stars outside, your reflection faint in the glass. You imagine something or someone out there doing the same, watching their own sky, wondering if they're alone. Maybe this is how civilizations meet, not with words, but with wonder. Hours later, the station passes through the Terminator line again, night becoming day in a slow sweep of gold. The earth below bursts into color. You can see the outlines of continents, the shimmer of oceans, the faint scars of weather. It feels both impossibly small and infinitely rich, a fragile spark cradled in the dark. You remember Galileo's trembling hands, Copernicus's candlelight, Hypatia's scrolls, the Polynesian navigators tracing waves with their fingers, the monks whispering prayers to align bells with the stars, Hubble at his telescope, catching galaxies in the corner of his eye. And now this, machines orbiting above the world, catching whispers from beyond it. Each generation reaching further, their bare hands replaced by instruments, but the longing unchanged. You think of the signal again, that soft pattern of numbers. Even if it was just static, even if it came from nowhere at all, it still meant something. It meant we were still listening. You press your forehead to the glass. The stars blur. You whisper, if you can hear us, we remember you. And somehow that feels enough. because maybe that's the real purpose of all this searching, to make the universe aware of its own beauty, to make meaning where there was only motion. As the station drifts onward, a sunrise bloom zooms over the curve of Earth, scattering light across the panels until everything shines, the metal, the glass, your reflection, your tears. You close your eyes and let the warmth find you until you can't tell where you end and where the sky begins. The hum of the engines deepens, the world spins below, the stars wait above. Everything continues, unbroken, infinite, and beautifully unfinished. The hum fades until all that remains is your heartbeat, steady and small against the vastness pressing at the glass. The station has entered the planet's shadow again. Outside, the sun is gone, replaced by the quiet rain of stars. They hang there, uncountable, ancient, unmoving to the eye, and yet everyone is in motion, scattering outward with the same force that first breathed light into darkness. You float for a long while, watching that stillness move. Then you realize this is how the story always ends, not with answers, but with awareness. Down on Earth, night spreads like ink. Cities flicker awake, mirrors of the constellations above. You picture the lives unfolding beneath those lights. A child standing at a bedroom window, trying to find Orion's belt. A sailor on a midnight shift staring at the North Star. An astronomer alone in a field setting up a telescope and waiting for clouds to pass. They're all part of it. Every gaze upward adds a note to the same song. A quiet voice drifts across the calm, orbital sunrise in 2 minutes. You turn back to the viewport. The edge of Earth glows faintly, a thin crescent of light rising through layers of blue and gold. It's gentle at first, then astonishing. The sunlight spills across the curve of the world like water breaking over stone. Clouds ignite from below, oceans flash into liquid silver, and the dark side of the planet becomes alive again. No painter could ever catch it. No equation could truly explain it. You understand now why every era thought the heavens divine, not because they're unreachable, but because they make you feel both fragile and infinite at once. You remember a line once said by an old scientist, perhaps Newton, perhaps someone lost to time. We are only children collecting shells on the shore, while the great ocean of truth lies all undiscovered before us. The light swells until it fills everything. The stars vanish, hidden but not gone. The station's panels gleam, its shadow melts away, and the hum of engines deepens into a low, comforting rhythm, the sound of humanity still moving forward. You stay there, watching the horizon bloom, feeling that same quiet pulse that connects the first fires of creation to this exact breath. The search, the maps, the mathematics, the prayers, it was all the same gesture, an outstretched hand toward wonder. And now, as sunlight floods the glass, you finally understand what the earliest astronomers must have felt when they reached out with nothing but faith and curiosity, that the universe was never something to be solved. It was something to be shared. The light warms your face. Below, the earth spins with its slow, patient beauty. Above, the stars wait to return. You whisper into the brightness, we're still here. And somewhere in the vast, breathing silence, the universe answers back, not with sound, but with presence. A calm, endless acknowledgement that it has always heard you. Everything glows, everything turns, everything continues. The sunlight fades slowly and shadow returns. Not darkness exactly, but that deep blue quiet that lives between day and night. The stars begin to appear again, first a few, then 1,000, then so many you stop trying to count. You stay by the glass, weightless, suspended between everything you know and everything you don't. The earth rolls beneath you. Its clouds fold like silk, its oceans glitter where dawn hasn't reached. Somewhere down there, someone is falling asleep beside an open window, and someone else is waking to their first cup of coffee. The human rhythm continues, ordinary and miraculous. The calm crackles softly. A voice from another station drifts through static. A routine exchange, nothing dramatic. Coordinates, telemetry, signal strength. But then another voice, younger, breaks protocol. Do you ever look at it and forget to breathe? A pause. Then A laugh. Every time. You smile. That's it, the whole point. Centuries of math and glass and risk and fire, all for that one quiet confession. Every time. You close your eyes and imagine the chain of memory that brought you here. The hands that carved symbols into clay under Babylon's sun. The priests of Karnak standing still as stars shifted above the Nile. The Greek philosophers drawing circles in sand, arguing about perfection. The Chinese astronomers with bamboo tubes and careful records of eclipses. The scholars of Baghdad whispering over ink and brass. The monks counting shadows by candlelight. The Polynesians reading the waves. The Renaissance dreamers grinding glass until their fingers bled. The scientists and wanderers who refused to stop asking why. Each one of them, in their own moment, lifted their face to the night and felt what you feel now. A hush that fills the bones, a weightless awe that has no name. You realize there was never really a beginning or an end to their story. The act of looking is the story. The moment the eye meets infinity, the circle closes again. A faint tone rings through the observatory. The data streams resume, soft as rainfall. You glance at the monitors, numbers, wavelengths, graphs, the language of the cosmos written in light. One display shows a deep field image taken earlier that week. Galaxies upon galaxies, colors blooming in silence, light from places so distant they no longer exist, yet their ghosts still shine. You stare at it until your vision blurs. The image feels less like looking at the universe and more like looking at memory itself. For a long time, no one speaks. The others drift quietly at their stations, watching, listening, breathing. There's a peace to it, a collective surrender to something too large to hold. Outside, a meteor crosses the atmosphere below you, a thin silver scar over the curve of Earth. It lasts only a heartbeat before it's gone, but that's enough. The universe doesn't need to last forever to matter. You lean your head against the glass. The stars reflect faintly in your eyes. You whisper, "We see you." The stars don't reply, but maybe they don't need to. Maybe this, all of it, the hands, the fire, the questions, the laughter, is their way of answering. The planet turns, the light returns, and the story, impossibly, continues. The station completes another orbit, and you can feel the gentle vibration through the soles of your feet, the faint pulse of engines keeping everything steady against the infinite pull of nowhere. There's comfort in that hum, like a heartbeat reminding you that motion off is life. You float back toward the main window, where the curvature of Earth gleams below, so close you could almost touch it. A thin blue line rims the edge. The atmosphere, fragile as glass, the single veil between all this breathing color and the void. You can see storms swirling across oceans, cities lighting up along coasts, threads of silver cloud drifting lazily across continents. Every storm, every river, every pulse of light down there feels like a continuation of the same cosmic rhythm that began with stardust. For a long moment, you just watch. You don't need language for this. The sight fills the air around you, dissolving thought. Behind you, the rest of the crew moves quietly. A few are writing, one drifts near the telescope, eyes closed as though listening. The data continues to pour in, but no one rushes. The further we've gone, the slower the need to hurry has become. The universe is patient, it always waits. A soft tone sounds. Inca monitor glows faintly, showing live footage from the lunar base. It's smaller than this station, more angular, built into the gray dust of the moon's southern pole. The feed shakes a little, static moving across it like waves, then clears. A woman waves at the camera. Behind her, the black sky of the moon hangs over a ridge of silver dust. "We caught your sunrise," she says with a grin. "Looked beautiful from here." Someone near you answers, laughing, "It looked pretty good from Earth, too." For a second, the whole room seems to relax. Two worlds speaking casually like neighbors leaning over a fence. The impossible has become normal. The stars are no longer unreachable. They're part of the daily weather. You imagine what comes next. Telescopes orbiting other worlds, ships threading the space between planets, maybe one day between stars. The tools will change again: quantum mirrors, light sails, memories stored in photons. But the impulse will be the same. Someone will always want to look. You find yourself thinking of the first pair of human eyes that ever lifted to the night and realized the stars moved. You think of how they must have felt: tiny, cold, astonished. You realize that every advance, every triumph of science and technology is still an echo of that first heartbeat of wonder. You drift closer to the window until your reflection overlaps the planet below. Your face, the world, and the stars all layered together, the most honest portrait of what you are. You whisper to the reflection, "We never stopped being part of you." Outside, the dawn rolls forward across the planet again. The light spills upward, golden, alive. You can see lightning flicker through the clouds, cities waking one after another, oceans burning with morning. It's almost too much beauty to stand. Somewhere inside the station, someone begins playing soft music, a simple melody, half classical, half improvised. It fills the air like breath. No one speaks. You watch the world turn and listen to the faint strains of piano and wind. You think, this is what it means to map the stars with bare hands. Not to conquer them, but to touch them. To understand that in the end, the universe was never distant. It was always here, in the rhythm of engines, in the shimmer of air, in the warmth against your skin. You close your eyes, letting the light wash through you until everything, sound, thought, heartbeat, becomes one quiet orbit. The music fades, but its echo lingers in the silence, a pulse that feels less like melody and more like breathing. The station glides through another stretch of shadow, and for a while there's only the soft rhythm of air filtration, the murmur of keyboards, and the occasional sigh of someone lost in thought. You float near the window again, drawn by the endlessness of it all. Outside, the stars have turned cold and sharp, a glittering frost across the black. Somewhere out there, light from a dying sun travels millions of years just to reach you. You can't decide if that's devotion or inertia, maybe both. For the first time, you notice your reflection clearly. You've aged since the story began. Lines where there used to be smoothness, a kind of gentleness in your eyes. You've seen so much, carried so many centuries of watching, yet your expression is calm. The sky hasn't changed, but you have. You speak softly to your reflection. We've done it, haven't we? We've become the Watchers. And you realize that's the truest outcome of all these ages. Not power, not dominion, but attention. Humanity's great achievement is simply to have noticed the universe, and in doing so, allowed the universe to notice itself. The intercom hums. A voice fills the cabin, low and even. Orbital transfer complete. Begin data handoff to ground relay. There's a flurry of quiet motion. Screens light up, numbers stream across displays. One of the younger scientists, barely 20, leans close to a terminal, her face glowing in the reflection of the screen. She whispers, "Every byte of this is light older than life itself." She doesn't mean it poetically, it's just a fact, but you feel it like a prayer. Outside, something stirs, a glint of motion far below. The aurora australis spills across the southern curve of the Earth, green and violet ribbons twisting like slow fire. The entire crew drifts to the window. No one speaks. Even the machines seem to hush. The aurora moves like thought itself, silent, weightless, infinite in patience. It feels like the Earth is returning the gaze, showing its own kind of starlight. You press a hand to the glass, and for a fleeting second, it almost feels warm. You imagine those first astronomers again, standing barefoot in dust or snow, eyes lifted to the same dance of color centuries before words for it existed. You imagine them pointing upward, whispering names into the dark. You imagine them feeling exactly what you feel now. The scientist beside you murmurs, "It's strange. The more we learn, the more human it all feels." You nod. Because we're made of it. Everything we discover is something we already carry. The aurora fades, but its ghost remains in the curve of the planet. Below, the lights of cities sparkle again, constellations drawn in electric veins. Above, the real constellations blaze, older and wiser, but no brighter. The symmetry is perfect. Two maps of the same impulse. Someone starts the music again, just a few quiet chords this time, a heartbeat in sound. You drift back, watching the Earth turn. The scientist turns to you. When do you think we'll stop looking? You smile. Never. The sky's too patient to stop answering. You close your eyes. The engines hum beneath you, the world spins below, the stars drift above, and everything for one small eternal moment feels at peace. Time slips again, so gently that you almost don't notice it. The orbits blur into one another. Days become data, nights become memory. You've stopped trying to separate the two. Out here, it all blends. The warmth of sunlight across the glass, the slow passage of shadow, the pulse of gravity holding everything together. You drift once more to the observation deck. The Earth lies beneath you, calm and enormous, its clouds a quiet storm of light and motion. You can see the edges of continents, the soft bloom of dawn rising over Africa, a shimmer of gold where rivers meet the sea. It feels like watching your own heartbeat magnified. A quiet conversation drifts from behind you, two researchers discussing a new image from the telescope array. You turn, and one beckons you closer. On the screen is a patch of space so dark it seems empty. Then, slowly, points of light begin to emerge. Not stars, but galaxies. Hundreds of them, glowing faintly in the distance, each one a collection of billions of suns. This is from the deep field, one whispers. We aimed at a piece of sky smaller than a grain of sand held at arm's length, and it was full. You stare. Each speck is a history, a whole universe of stories. Each one might hold worlds, oceans, perhaps eyes looking back. You feel dizzy, but not from fear, more from recognition. The universe doesn't stop, it only hides until someone looks closely enough. No one speaks for a while. The hum of the station seems softer now, reverent. You think about the first night any human ever looked up, realizing that the same stars shining through smoke and silence are still here, still burning, still answering. You realize how every age has called it something different, divine order, celestial music, cosmic background radiation, but it's all the same language. Awe. One of the researchers sighs. We've mapped so much, she says, but sometimes I think the point was never to finish. You nod. It wasn't. The idea settles between you like starlight. There is no finish line, no final discovery waiting behind the next horizon. The journey is the meaning, the act of looking, wondering, connecting. The cosmos isn't a puzzle to solve, it's a mirror to stand before until you recognize yourself in it. The others return to their work, but you stay by the screen, lost in the endless scatter of galaxies. It feels almost like memory, familiar in a way you can't explain. You reach out, tracing one faint spiral with your fingertip against the glass. You were here before us, you whisper, and you'll be here after. The lights of the control room dim slightly as the station drifts into shadow again. Earth slides beneath you, dark, except for the thin glow of cities and storms. Somewhere down there, someone else is staring up at the same stars, maybe wondering if anyone is looking back. You almost want to tell them yes. The engines hum, the stars shimmer. You close your eyes and listen to the soft machinery of the universe turning. It's the same rhythm as breath, the same tempo as a heartbeat. When you open your eyes again, the stars seem closer, not brighter, just more intimate, like they've leaned forward to hear. You whisper, not to them, but to everything, "Thank you for waiting." And in that moment, the silence feels full. Not empty, not vast, just right. You stay there, letting the world spin beneath you, the stars drifting above, the centuries folding inward until they all become one long moment of looking and seeing and remembering why you looked in the first place. The next orbit feels slower somehow, like the station is gliding through syrupy light. Maybe it's because you've started to feel the rhythm of it, the slow turn, the gentle hum, the patient swing between sunlight and shadow. It's not routine, it's ritual. Every pass around the Earth feels like a heartbeat. Every sunrise, another reminder that time Out here is both endless and intimate. You float to the viewport again, drawn by a quiet instinct. The Earth fills half your vision, and the other half is infinity. It's not an equal balance, but it feels right. The planet breathes in color and movement. Space exhales silence and distance. You can almost feel the conversation between them. Somewhere far off, a comm light flickers. The signal comes through slowly, a delayed transmission from a deep space probe still wandering the edge of the solar system. Its tone is faint, like the sound of wind through an old radio. The technician on duty leans forward, decoding the numbers, translating them into a soft stream of images. You move closer. On the screen, darkness, then a wash of faint gold. The camera turns, catching a single shaft of sunlight scattered by dust. And there, almost invisible, a tiny blue spark floats in the middle of the frame. "That's us," the technician says. His voice trembles slightly. "That's the pale blue dot." You know the image before he even says it. The photograph taken from billions of miles away, Earth captured as a speck of reflected light suspended in cosmic dusk. But seeing it here, raw and flickering from a real signal, feels different. It's not nostalgia, it's a realization. You stare at it for a long time. That pixel contains every language, every mistake, every song, every dream, every heartbeat. It's the sum of all things, both beautiful and brief. The entire history of human longing contained in a mode of light smaller than a grain of dust. Someone murmurs a line you half remember. "That's home. That's us." And the room falls silent. Even the machines seem to pause. You think about the first astronomers again, how they imagined the heavens as a dome around Earth, and how they'd stand barefoot on dirt, believing the stars were holes poked through the sky by the gods. They were wrong about the scale, but not the feeling. You understand now, they were never trying to explain the universe. They were trying to find their place in it. That's still what you're doing, what everyone is doing. You drift back from the console and look out the window again. The stars blur slightly through your tears, and the Earth, glowing, small, impossibly alive, turns quietly below. The beauty isn't in how vast it all is, it's in how fragile. In the corner of your vision, the younger technician wipes his eyes, pretending he's just tired. He laughs once, softly. "We're so small," he says, "and yet somehow we made it this far." You nod, and we'll keep going. He smiles without looking away from the screen. "Yeah, we always do." Outside, the sun rises again, spilling gold over the curve of the planet. The light crawls across the ocean, climbs the clouds, and touches the edges of the station until everything gleams. You raise a hand to block it, but the warmth slips through your fingers anyway. You whisper to the blue world turning below, to the stars that never stop shining, to every soul that ever looked up and dared to wonder, "We remember you." The light brightens, the planet turns, the hum of the engines deepens, steady, eternal, like the quiet heartbeat of a universe still dreaming itself awake. The light stays with you long after sunrise. It fills the corridors, touches the polished rails, and lingers on the faces of everyone you pass. For a few hours, no one speaks much. The image of that tiny blue spark has quieted everyone, softened them somehow. Even the air feels gentler, like the station itself is remembering. Later, you find yourself alone again in the observation dome. The Earth glows beneath you, its clouds slowly curling over the Pacific. The stars look paler in daylight, but they're still there, scattered like faint memories. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine the view from the other side, from that pale dot's distance, where the station and the oceans and everything you've ever known would disappear into a single pixel of color. You imagine what it would be like for someone, somewhere, looking this way. Would they recognize that little flicker as something alive? Would they see the warmth in it? The pulse of oceans, the shimmer of cities, the endless reach of minds trying to understand the dark? You open your eyes again. The sun is moving toward the horizon now, and its light slants through the dome, burning gold. Dust motes drift in the air like tiny worlds. You reach out, and the particles swirl around your hand, glittering, each one catching the glow. You think, this is what we are: light and dust, nothing more and nothing less. The comms hum. Down on Earth, a storm is crossing the Atlantic, and the data from the satellites pours in: pressure systems, wind speeds, cloud densities, all that information, all that movement, and yet from up here, it just looks like art: vast, living, fluid. You realize that everything we study, measure, and categorize still resists neatness. The universe prefers beauty to symmetry. A quiet voice joins you. One of the researchers floats beside you, her gaze fixed on the same view. You ever think we've seen everything? She asks softly. You shake your head. We've only seen what light lets us see. She smiles, half wistful. Then maybe that's the point, to keep chasing what light hides. You both fall silent again. The Earth turns, the station moves, and far out beyond the solar system, beyond even the reach of your instruments, there are places no human eye will ever find. Places that don't need to be found to exist. Somehow, that's comforting. You imagine the deep cold between galaxies, the faint radiation still echoing from the universe's first moments. Somewhere in that darkness, there are stars being born, their first light still racing toward you, destined to reach Earth long after you're gone. You will never see them, but one day, someone will. That's enough. The woman beside you sighs, a small sound that could mean contentment or melancholy. You know? She says. I think the stars are patient because they know we'll come eventually. You glance at her. Do you think we should? She shrugs. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe it's enough that we look. Her words settle in your chest like gravity. You nod slowly. Yeah. Maybe that's what they've been waiting for all along. The last of the sun fades behind the curve of the world, and the stars bloom back into view. Sharp, countless, impossibly far. You press your hand against the glass again, palm to infinity. The reflection merges you with the sky, your outline dissolving into the constellations. For a moment, you can't tell where your hand ends and the light begins. You smile, a small and private thing, and whisper, almost without meaning to, "We're home." No one answers, no voice, no sound, only the low hum of the station and the slow, steady turning of everything that has ever been. But somehow the silence feels like an embrace. And as the earth spins beneath you, its storms glowing, its cities pulsing, you feel the same truth that guided every watcher before you, that to see the stars is to be seen by them, that the act of looking is its own form of belonging. You stay there, breathing in rhythm with the orbit, until the first light of dawn edges over the planet once more. The glow touches your face, warm and familiar. You close your eyes and let it pass through you like memory, like forgiveness, like the quiet promise that everything, everywhere is still unfolding. The glow deepens into full morning. Golden light spills through the observation dome until everything inside seems weightless. Your hands, your breath, even the walls that hold you here. The world below glitters with oceans and sunlit clouds, the thin blue line of atmosphere trembling like the edge of a soap bubble. You can hear faint movement behind you. People stirring coffee, typing quietly, running system checks. It's a gentle kind of bustle, the sound of humans learning how to live in the middle of infinity. No urgency, no panic. Just the patient rhythm of a species that has finally learned how to breathe in space. You turn your gaze back to Earth. There's a subtle ache in your chest. Not sadness exactly, more like homesickness for something you can't name. Every orbit shows you a new side of the same truth. How beautiful and how fragile home really is. The deserts blaze. The forests shimmer. The oceans gleam like veins of light. It's all there. Still spinning, still trying. A soft voice interrupts your thoughts. We've just received another image, someone says. You glance toward the display. It's not of Earth this time, but of something further, beyond the solar system entirely. A long exposure from a deep space probe that's still sending data decades after its launch. The image fills the screen slowly, a faint ring of light against black, a shadowed core glowing dimly in the center. That's a black hole, the technician murmurs, or at least its outline. You can almost feel the room stop breathing. A hole in space where light itself cannot escape, and yet somehow light circles it, tracing its edges, revealing what can't be seen. You think even darkness has a shape when someone looks closely enough. One of the younger crew members leans forward, whispering, "So that's the end of everything?" "No," you reply quietly. "It's just another beginning." Because that's what all of this has been. Every discovery, every map, every whispered equation, an endless series of beginnings. No walls, only doors. The more you learn, the more the universe invites you forward. The crew keeps staring at the image, each lost in their own version of wonder. Someone mutters, almost to themselves, "It's beautiful." Another adds, "It's terrifying." Both are right. You realize they always were. Outside, Earth's day has turned fully bright. Sunlight floods the dome, turning the glass into mirrors. You catch your reflection again, but this time it's overlaid with the planet's curve, the black hole's ring, the stars beyond. It's all there, past, present, infinite future, layered in one quiet frame. You reach out, fingertips brushing your own reflection, and you say the only thing that feels true. We finally learned how to see. The hum of the engines continues, steady and calm. You close your eyes. The light shifts behind your eyelids like waves, and somewhere in that brightness, you can still feel the pull of every bare hand that ever pointed upward, every heart that ever wondered if the night was listening. It always was. The station moves forward, a small miracle in a universe that keeps unfolding. You open your eyes again, and the stars are waiting, always answering. The hours blur again into that quiet, steady rhythm, the heartbeat of orbit. Every pass of the station feels slower now, more deliberate, like time has softened to match your breathing. The earth gleams below, half in daylight, half in shadow, a living mosaic of blues and greens wrapped in a thin silver haze. You think about how long humanity has been climbing toward this vantage point, one generation building upon the last. Clay tablets to brass instruments, telescopes to rockets, equations to algorithms. Every tool was a rung on the same invisible ladder. And now you stand near the top, not at the end, but at a new beginning. You glance at the control console. The transmission from the deep space probe is still running, the signal faint but unbroken. Data scrolls across the screen, radiation readings, temperature fluctuations, empty space singing in numbers. It's strange how even silence can be translated into meaning. One of the engineers floats by, eyes half closed from exhaustion. "You ever think it's too big?" she murmurs. "The universe, I mean. Too much to know." You smile faintly. "I think it's exactly the right size," you say. "Big enough to keep us humble." She nods, maybe understanding, maybe just tired. Then she drifts away, leaving you alone again with the stars. Outside the dome, a thin haze of aurora shimmers along Earth's rim, electric green and violet curtains waving through the magnetosphere. They ripple across the atmosphere like breath. You can almost feel them moving through you, whispering in a language older than sound. You think about the first sparks of life that rose from that same planet, the slow alchemy of chemistry into consciousness. Every cell, every thought, every dream born from the dust of collapsing stars. You're not separate from what you see out there. You're made of it. You whisper, "We've been looking at ourselves all along." A soft tone hums through the cabin, signaling a new transmission. This time it's from Earth, live footage from a classroom. A teacher stands beside a window, holding up a small model of the solar system. Around her, children raise their hands eagerly, faces bright, eyes wide. "Who can tell me what a star is made of?" she asks. A little boy answers without hesitation, "The same stuff as us!" The class laughs, but the teacher just smiles. Exactly. The feed flickers and ends, but that voice, small, certain, joyful, lingers in your mind like light. You realize that's the truest definition of progress. Not the telescopes or the data, but that moment when wonder becomes shared. When curiosity is inherited, the station passes back into night. Below, the earth fades to shadow, cities glowing like constellations. Above, the stars return in full brilliance, each one a steady pulse across time. You float closer to the glass until your forehead rests against it. The reflection there is soft, ghost-like, but alive. You whisper, "We kept the promise," and the universe answers, not in words, but in the same quiet radiance it's always used. The same light that guided nomads, sailors, scholars, and dreamers. The same light now falling gently across your face. You close your eyes, breathing slowly, feeling the hum of orbit, the turning of the earth, the weightless hush of everything that ever was and ever will be. It's all one motion, one endless gaze, one infinite story still unfolding. You open your eyes, and for a moment the line between you and the night disappears. The dome's glass is so clear it's like you've stepped into the void itself, your breath mingling with the starlight. There's no sound, just the soft vibration of the station, a hum so low it feels like the background note of the universe. Far below, dawn is creeping across the continents again. A faint gold rim curls around the planet's edge, and the clouds blush pink before turning white. From here, you can see entire weather systems unfolding like slow fireworks, lightning pulsing deep within thunderheads, tiny bursts of brightness that flash and fade before your eyes. It strikes you that this is exactly what the first astronomers must have felt, watching the heavens move, sensing the rhythm, guessing at the pattern, believing it meant something because it had to. They didn't have lenses or spacecraft, but they had patience. They had sky. They had the ache of wanting to know. Somewhere 1,000 generations ago, someone stood on a plain and marked the rising of a star with a stick in the dirt. Another counted nights by how far the moon traveled across a ridge. They didn't call it science. They called it watching. And in a way, that's still all you're doing now. Just watching, a little higher up. You think of them often, those sky watchers. They never saw the earth from above, yet somehow they understood its place. They built stone calendars, carved constellations into cave ceilings, told stories about bears, hunters, and serpents written in stars. They didn't just map the heavens, they turned them into mirrors. You float there, trying to imagine what they'd say if they could see what you see now. Maybe they'd smile. Maybe they'd tell you that nothing's changed, that the universe was never about answers, only the act of looking. Behind you, the display lights blink softly. The system's sensors are tracing the faint arcs of satellites, fragments of human creation circling the same planet, a slow ballet of metal and light. Each one carries a purpose: weather, communication, navigation. But together, there's something more. A glowing testament that the species of fire and bone learned how to leave the ground. The earth turns another fraction. The sun spills over the oceans, making them blaze like molten glass. You feel the warmth even through the station's shielding, and for a heartbeat, you imagine you're back down there, feet in the sand, salt wind on your face. Then you remember, you're not separate from that world. You're part of its breath, its orbit, its endless motion. You whisper again, to no one in particular, "We're still looking." A message indicator flashes. It's from Mission Control. The text scrolls simply, "New star catalog uploaded, cross-reference complete. Over 200 exoplanets confirmed." You smile, the corners of your mouth tilting upward in quiet disbelief. 200 worlds, 200 chances for life, for stories, for someone else looking back at the same stars. You imagine them. Creatures beneath another sun, wondering if they're alone, marking the heavens with their own symbols, dreaming of flight. You think, maybe they're watching us right now. The thought doesn't frighten you. It soothes you. Because whether they exist or not, the possibility is enough. It means the night still holds secrets. It means there are still things left to find. You press your palm to the glass once more. The reflection of your hand merges with the swirl of Earth below, the arc of the Milky Way above, and the endless scatter of light in between. Everything touching, everything circling, everything shining. And you realize This is what they meant when they said we were made of stars. It was never just about matter. It was about motion, about longing, about the need to reach and never stop. You close your eyes again and let the silence deepen. The station hums. The earth turns. The stars burn on, indifferent yet endlessly patient. Somewhere out there, another dawn is waiting. And when it rises, someone, somewhere will look up, just like you, and feel small and infinite all at once. The night folds around you again, darker this time, deeper. The stars are motionless and alive all at once, each one older than every story humanity has ever told. You drift closer to the window, weightless, the curve of the earth slipping into shadow below. It looks fragile now, its edges glowing faintly blue like the halo of a candle flame. The aurora shivers one last time across the poles before fading into the dark. You can feel it, the end of the journey approaching. Not a stop, not a landing, but a soft tapering of motion, the way the sea hushes as it meets the shore. Everything is slowed, your heartbeat, the rotation of thoughts, the chatter of instruments. It's as if the entire universe is leaning in, waiting for the quiet to settle. The comms are silent, the crew sleeps, only the low vibration of orbit remains. You imagine the planet below also exhaling, whole continents breathing in rhythm. Somewhere, waves are striking sand, winds are curling through forests, people are dreaming under the same sky you're looking at now. You think about the first eyes that ever looked up, those ancient astronomers who mapped the heavens with nothing but patience and bare hands. They never left their valleys or deserts, yet somehow they reached this same stillness. Maybe they understood something we keep forgetting, that the stars don't need us to be conquered, they only need to be seen. Your fingers trace a small smear on the glass, the oil from your skin catching the faint light. It reminds you of all the fingerprints that have ever touched the world, each one a quiet declaration that someone was here, that someone looked, that someone tried to understand. The reflection shimmers, and for a fleeting instant you see all of them. The shepherds, the sailors, the scholars, the engineers, the dreamers, standing behind you in the glass, all gazing outward through the same window in time. The thought warms you more than the filtered sunlight ever could, because that's what astronomy really was, all along, not charts or telescopes or formulas. It was a chain of wonder passed hand to hand, across centuries and languages, through darkness and disaster. Each person adding one more dot to the great pattern, trusting that someone else would come along to connect it. Outside, a new star rises over the edge of the earth. Its light reaches you after traveling for hundreds of years, older than the country you were born in, older than your family name, older than every word you've ever spoken. It lands on your face softly, a messenger from the past. You close your eyes and let it rest there, its warmth sinking in like memory. You know now that nothing truly ends. The stars you map tonight will burn long after you're gone, but so will the curiosity that drew you to them. Somewhere someone will pick up where you left off. Maybe they'll stand on another moon or another planet, and they'll look up and whisper the same small question that started it all. What's out there? You smile. The answer has always been the same. Everything. Everything that ever was, and everything still waiting. The light fades gradually until the station feels like it's floating inside a dream. The hum quiets, your breathing slows, and the glass no longer separates you from the sky. It feels like you're part of it. The stars don't flicker anymore. They pulse gently, like distant hearts keeping time. You let the rhythm pull you under. You think of hands drawing in sand, of stone circles aligned with the solstice, of eyes squinting at the horizon to catch the first spark of Venus. You think of monks copying sky charts by candlelight, of sailors steering by constellations they barely knew how to name, of Galileo whispering apologies to a planet that refused to stay still. Every one of them, a heartbeat. Every one of them, a point of light. The orbit continues, the world spins. Somewhere below, another dawn prepares to climb over the edge of the sea. The air grows brighter around you, a slow gradient from indigo to gold. You realize you don't need to understand everything to feel complete. Sometimes knowing you're part of the pattern is enough. You exhale. The sound is almost imperceptible, a sigh that dissolves into the quiet. The last traces of night lift away. The first sunlight breaks through the window, flooding the cabin in gold. You watch it drift across the floor, painting every surface, filling every shadow. It feels like a promise kept, like the universe saying, "You've seen enough for now." Your thoughts begin to dim. The details blur. The faint hum of life support, the heartbeat of the engines, the gentle rotation of the station. You let them fade. You imagine yourself drifting above the world, weightless and safe, the stars watching over you like old friends. Everything softens, edges, light, even time itself. And in the hush that follows, the universe breathes with you. The earth turns, the stars wait. The story continues quietly, forever. Sweet dreams.